Welcome, welcome. You're here at Multiverse Harry. Today we present to you, what if Lucifer Morningstar was Harry's real father and all of hell declared war on Dumbledore? Like and subscribe if you want more awesome stories. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. Chapter 1. The letter that was never sent. This summer Vernon Dursley decided to paint the front door of number 4, Privet Drive a deep, dignified burgundy. Was the same summer Harry Potter turned 11, and the universe, apparently, had opinions about both decisions. The door looked terrible. Harry had said nothing about this because saying things at Privet Drive was a habit he'd largely abandoned, like hoping for birthday cake, or expecting to be called by his actual name before noon. Uncle Vernon had stood back from the finished door with his hands on his hips and the look of a man who had conquered something, and Aunt Petunia had said, "Very smart, Vernon." And Dudley had not looked up from the television, and Harry had gone back to the cupboard under the stairs and stared at the ceiling and thought about nothing in particular, which was safer. That was June. By July, Harry had moved from the cupboard to Dudley's second bedroom, not out of any generosity on the Dursleys' part, but because Dudley had broken so many things in the cupboard during a particularly enthusiastic tantrum that it had become structurally questionable. Aunt Petunia had looked at Harry for a long moment when she made the announcement, like she was calculating something, and then looked away. Harry had carried his things upstairs in 2 trips. There wasn't much. His birthday was the 31st of July. He knew something was building toward it the way you know a storm is coming before the clouds arrive, a pressure in the air, a change in the quality of silence. He didn't know what it was. He just knew that this birthday felt different from the 10 that had preceded it, all of which had been distinguished primarily by their similarity to every other day of the year, except sometimes Dudley threw something at him and called it a present. The morning of July 31st began unremarkably. Aunt Petunia made eggs. Vernon read the paper. Dudley ate approximately his own body weight in toast. Harry was given the task of de-weeding the garden, which was a task that expanded mysteriously to fill whatever time was available, always ending just before dinner, so he had no time to sit and be idle and develop, as Vernon put it, ideas. He was pulling up a particularly stubborn patch of something that might have been a weed or might have been a small, ambitious plant with aspirations, when the post arrived. He heard the slot, heard the scattered slap of envelopes on the hallway floor, and didn't think anything of it. Post was not Harry's domain. Post was Vernon's domain, guarded with the territorial seriousness of a man who received catalogs for gardening equipment, and considered this correspondence of significance. He went back to the weed. The pull of it was, and he would think about this later, turning it over, not magical. Not dramatic. It wasn't a voice or a vision. It was just a quiet, unreasonable certainty that he needed to be inside. Like the feeling you get when you've left something important somewhere, and your brain knows before you do. He went in through the back door. The post was scattered across the hallway floor. 3 envelopes, a bill from the looks of it, something in a brown envelope that was definitely a catalog, and one more. That one more was what stopped him. It was black. Not dark blue, not charcoal, not the kind of black that's really just a very dark gray in certain light. It was black the way the sky is black at 3 in the morning when there's no moon and you're somewhere far from any city and you look up and feel, briefly, like you could fall into it. The envelope absorbed light in a way that made the hallway around it seem slightly less real. His name was written on it in silver ink. Not printed. Written, in handwriting that was sharp and elegant, and looked like it had been put down quickly by someone who wrote that beautifully without thinking about it. Harry J. Potter. No address. No return mark. Just his name, and a seal on the back, a circle of what looked like black wax stamped with a sigil he didn't recognize. 6-pointed. Intricate. It didn't look cold, but when he picked the envelope up, his fingertips registered something that wasn't quite temperature, more like the memory of cold, or the idea of it. He stood there in the Dursleys' hallway with the black envelope in his hands. Boy! He tucked it into the back waistband of his jeans in one motion, smooth and automatic, years of practice at not being caught with things. Vernon appeared at the kitchen doorway, holding his paper, cheeks already the preliminary pink of a man building toward a proper color. "What are you doing standing in the hall?" "Got the post," Harry said, and held out the bill and the catalogue. Vernon took them, looked at Harry with the particular suspicion he reserved for moments when Harry was being too calm, and then went back to the kitchen. Harry went back to the garden. His heart was beating in a way he didn't entirely understand. He didn't open it until later. The afternoon emptied out the way summer afternoons do when you have no friends nearby and no permissions to go anywhere interesting. Dudley was out with his gang. Vernon was in his study doing whatever Vernon did in there, which Harry had always imagined involved spreadsheets and a profound sense of self-satisfaction. Petunia was in the back garden with a magazine, positioned with surgical precision to see most of the yard but not the narrow strip along the far fence where the old apple tree made a kind of shadow room in the late afternoon. Harry sat in the shadow of the apple tree with the black envelope on his knees. He turned it over once. Then again. The seal hadn't melted, hadn't changed. It just sat there being a seal, ancient-looking, unreadable to him. He broke it. The wax didn't crack so much as release, a single clean separation, like it had been waiting. The envelope opened without any resistance. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the same black as the envelope, and the writing on it was the same silver, but there was more of it here, and it was written, he had the distinct impression, with some care. Not the careless elegance of his name on the front. This was someone who had written a sentence, and then stopped. And then written more. Like they were deciding things as they went. He read it. "Harry, I've started this letter a number of times over the years, which is amusing given that I am not, by nature, someone who struggles to express himself. And yet, here we are. There are things you deserve to know. Several of them are about me. Most of them, I suspect, are things you have already felt in the way that the truth tends to make itself felt, not as new information but as confirmation of something you've always half known. I am your father. Your real one. I realize this is not a sentence designed for gentle delivery, and I find I'm not willing to soften it, both because softening things has never been my strength, and because I think you'd find it condescending. You seem, from everything I have observed, like a boy who prefers the direct version. Your mother's name was Lily. I imagine someone has told you that much. What they have likely not told you is that she was extraordinary, not merely as a witch, which she absolutely was, but as a person. She had a gift for seeing things clearly that most people spend their whole lives running from. She saw me clearly. Not the version I performed for the world. Me. And she chose to stay for a time, and what came from that time is you. I know you've grown up with questions that don't have satisfying answers. Why strange things happen around you. Why you are the way you are. I can't answer all of it in a letter. But I can tell you this, you are not ordinary. You are not the product of a perfectly ordinary family and an unfortunate accident of fate. You are something the world hasn't quite produced before, and the people who have been keeping you in the dark about it should have known better than to think it could last. You will have questions. Good. Bring them. There is a place, a jazz club in London, on Denmark Street, with a blue door that doesn't look like it belongs to the rest of the building, because it doesn't. Go there. Ask for me by name. My name is Lucifer. Yes. That Lucifer. I'll explain when I see you, and I promise I'm better in person than in reputation, which I'm aware is setting a low bar, but I maintain it is accurate. Come when you're ready. The door will know you. Harry read it once. Then he read it again. Then he sat for a while with the letter on his knees and the late afternoon light coming through the apple leaves in pieces, and he thought about the time he'd accidentally turned his teacher's wig blue, and the time he'd ended up on the school roof, and the time the glass front of the boa constrictor's enclosure at the zoo had simply ceased to exist, and the 100 small moments stretching back as far as he could remember where something impossible had happened, and everyone around him had looked at him like he was a problem requiring management. He thought about the Dursleys. About the particular flavor of fear Vernon had always aimed at him, not the straightforward fear of something dangerous but something more specific. The fear of a secret. The fear of being found out. He thought about his mother, who he'd never been told anything useful about. Brilliant. Died in a car crash. End of story, never revisit. He looked at the letter again. The silver ink caught the fading light. You are not ordinary. No, Harry said quietly to nobody. I really don't think I am. He folded the letter carefully, put it back in the envelope, and tucked it into his pillowcase that night. He lay in Dudley's old room surrounded by Dudley's broken toys and the faint smell of trainers and thought about everything, and somewhere around 2 in the morning he stopped thinking about it, and just felt the quiet certainty settle over him like something coming home. He would go. Obviously he would go. The only question was when, and the answer to that came the next morning. Petunia was in the kitchen when he came down. She had her back to him, washing something in the sink, and she went still when she heard his footsteps in the way she'd always gone still around him, the way you go still when something unpredictable is in the room. He'd spent a long time being hurt by that. He'd spent less time on it lately. Aunt Petunia, he said. Breakfast is on the table. Still not turning. I need to go to London today. Now she turned. Her face was doing several things at once: surprise, alarm, and underneath both of those, something older. Something guilty. Absolutely not. You're 11 years old. I've been to the corner shop on my own. I've been to school on my own. London's just more of the same direction. Harry, did you know? He asked. The question sat in the kitchen between them. Petunia's face went through something complicated and came out the other side looking tired in a way he never quite noticed before, like a person who has been carrying a heavy thing for a very long time and is beginning to feel the weight of it in their joints. She turned back to the sink. Get your breakfast, she said. Which was, Harry understood, an answer. He ate. He washed his plate. He went upstairs, put on the least bad clothes he owned, put the letter in his pocket, and came back downstairs. Petunia was in the sitting room. She didn't stop him when he went to the front door. She didn't say anything. But as he opened the door, the terrible burgundy door, he heard her, very quietly, say something. He stopped. What? A pause. Then, she loved you very much. Petunia's voice was odd, stripped of its usual thin quality. Your mother. She talked about you before you were born. She was so sure about you. Harry stood in the open doorway with the morning coming in around him. What was she sure about? He asked. Another pause. That you were going to be something, Petunia said, almost too quiet to hear. Harry thought about that. Then he nodded once, to himself, and walked out into the morning. He got the train to Waterloo and the tube to Tottenham Court Road, which put him close enough, and he walked Denmark Street with his hands in his pockets and the letter in his back pocket, and the address of exactly nothing on his phone because he didn't have a phone. He had the description, blue door that doesn't look like it belongs. Denmark Street was short and a bit battered looking in the way that streets in the middle of cities often are: music shops, a recording studio, a place that sold vintage guitars, a cafe that seemed uncertain about its own existence. He walked the length of it once. Then back. He was about to chalk this up as the world's most specific wild goose chase when he saw it. It was between a guitar shop and what appeared to be a closed rehearsal space. A door. Blue, not the cheerful blue of a child's toy, but the specific dense blue of deep ocean water at noon, if you could hold a piece of it and use it as a door. It didn't fit. The frame was slightly wrong for the building. The wood looked older than the brick around it by about 4 centuries, and there was no sign, no handle he could see from here, no reason for it to be there at all. He walked up to it. There was a handle, he saw now, black iron, shaped in a way that took him a moment to place, and then he placed it, a falling figure with spread wings, rendered in careful miniature. He put his hand around it, and the door opened without him turning anything. Inside was, not what he expected, though he wasn't sure what he'd expected. A jazz club, the letter had said, and that was exactly what it was. Dark wood, low lighting, round tables with candles, a stage at the far end currently occupied by a grand piano that had the look of an instrument that got played seriously. The whole place smelled of something between wood smoke and cedar, and something else he couldn't name, something deep and old that made his chest feel strange. The bar ran along one wall, bottles lined up behind it with the precise artistry of someone who considers this an aesthetic statement. It was mid-morning and the place was empty except for one person behind the bar, polishing a glass with the focused attention of a man who is doing something deeply unimportant as a way of managing something else entirely. Harry had thought about this moment. He'd thought about it on the train and the tube and walking down Denmark Street. He tried to imagine what his father, his real father, would look like, how he'd carry himself, whether it would be immediately obvious, whether Harry would feel something particular or just feel like he was looking at a stranger. He had not, precisely, imagined this. The man behind the bar was tall, not freakishly so, but tall in the way that takes up vertical space without effort. He was wearing a black suit that looked like it had cost more than most cars, no tie, top button undone, and he had dark hair and a face that was— Harry stared for a moment, working out what was unsettling about it, and then worked it out. His face was almost architectural. Like someone had designed it with specific intentions. Like beauty that wasn't an accident. His eyes, when he glanced up, were a very dark amber, the color of old whiskey held up to light, and they focused on Harry with the kind of precise attention that made you feel like you were suddenly the only thing in a room that had previously contained the whole world. There was a silence. "You're shorter than I expected," Lucifer Morningstar said. "Though I don't know why." "You're 11. You're exactly what I expected," Harry said. "Which is weird because I had no idea what to expect." Lucifer looked at him for a moment. And then he smiled, not the performed, theatrical smile of someone playing charming, but something quicker and more real, like Harry had surprised him, and he found being surprised pleasant. "Sit down," he said. "I'll get you something. Not alcohol, obviously, don't give me that look, I have juice. I'm told children enjoy juice. I've never been entirely sure why. I'm 11, not 4, Harry said, but he sat down at the bar. He put his hands on the wood, and felt it solid under his palms and made himself stay in the present moment rather than any of the several spiraling ones available to him. "Orange or apple?" "Orange." Lucifer poured it without looking away from him for more than was necessary to aim correctly, which Harry found both flattering and slightly unnerving. He slid the glass across. "So," Lucifer said. "So," Harry said. "You came." "I came." "I wasn't certain you would," Lucifer said, and there was something under the casual delivery of it, something that had been genuinely uncertain and found uncertainty uncomfortable. "You could have decided I was mad, or lying, or both." Most rational responses would have included at least a few days of deliberation. "I thought about it for about 8 hours," Harry said. "Then I decided." "What decided you?" Harry considered the question properly, which felt right. The man had asked it like he actually wanted the answer rather than a polite deflection. "Petunia," he said. "My aunt. She knew. She knew something anyway. And she didn't stop me from leaving, which is the closest she's probably ever come to telling me the truth about anything." That was enough. He looked at Lucifer directly. "And you said you preferred the direct version?" "I did." Lucifer put the polished glass down and rested his forearms on the bar, and the full weight of his attention, which was, Harry was beginning to understand, a measurable physical experience, came to bear. "I should tell you that I'm not going to apologize for being absent. I want to, and I won't. Not because I'm not sorry, but because an apology now, before I've explained anything, would be an empty thing, and I don't deal in empty things. Do you understand the distinction?" "I think so," Harry said. "You're saying you're not going to apologize your way past the explanation." "Exactly so." Another one of those quick, real smiles. "You're sharp. People keep being surprised by that," Harry said. "It's starting to feel like an insult." Lucifer leaned back slightly. "Who keeps being surprised?" "Everyone." Teachers, my aunt and uncle, my cousin's friends. Anyone who's decided what I am before talking to me. Harry looked down at his juice, looked back up. They all think I'm trouble. Not bad trouble. Just the kind of thing that's easier to contain than understand. And has anyone tried to understand? You're the first person who seems like they might. The jazz club was quiet. Somewhere outside, a bus went past and the sound of it was muffled and distant, like the room existed at a slight remove from the ordinary world. Harry was beginning to think that was probably literal. Tell me, Harry said, about my mother. It was the question he'd been sitting on since he read the letter, and he'd been saving it, he realized, because it felt like the most important one, the one that would tell him whether this man was what the letter promised he was, or whether it was something more complicated. Whether he would answer it or deflect it. Lucifer didn't deflect it. He was quiet for a moment, and in the quiet something moved across his face that Harry recognized even though he never had reason to learn it on someone else's face. It was grief, private and old, worn smooth by years of carrying it. Lily, Lucifer said, and just the name seemed to change the air pressure slightly. Your mother she was a witch in the technical sense, and a witch in the older sense, meaning she was someone the world bends around slightly when she walks through it. You know those people. Some people are just that way. She walked into a bar where I was, many years ago, and she looked at me, knowing, I should be clear, exactly who I was, and she said, "You look like someone who needs to talk to someone who isn't going to believe anything you say about yourself." And she sat down. Harry stared at him. That was her opener. She had a gift for the precise sentence. Something soft in Lucifer's expression. She was 22. She was in her last year at university. She'd done her magical education. She was doing a regular 1-2, chemistry. She liked to understand how things worked at their smallest. She wanted to know what held things together. He paused. We talked for 6 hours. I've had conversations that lasted decades that held less than that 6 hours. And then we were together for a while. A year, slightly more. She knew what I was. What our son would be. She wanted that. She made that choice with full information, which is important to me. Lily didn't do anything by accident. His hands were flat on the bar now, very still. I left before you were born. Not because I wanted to. Because there are things about what I am that make proximity dangerous, and she was pregnant, and I would not. He stopped. Started again. She was pregnant, and I loved her, and so I left. Harry absorbed this. And then she died. He said. And then she died. The quiet was different now, heavier. At the hands of a dark wizard named Voldemort. I'm sure you've been told nothing about that either. I've been told they died in a car crash. Harry said flatly. My parents. Lucifer looked at him. A car crash. I know. Your mother could have stopped a car crash with one hand while reading a. Lucifer stopped. Breathed once, precisely. Right. Yes. A car crash. How very economical. Tell me the real version. Voldemort came for her. For both of you, technically. There was a prophecy, there always is, it's one of the universe's more irritating habits. He killed James Potter. A flicker of something measured. James Potter was your mother's husband. Not your father. A good man, by all accounts, who loved her. Your mother bought time, tried to save you, and when she couldn't save you any other way, she used what she had. Which was considerable. She performed a protection so powerful that when Voldemort's killing curse touched you, it had nowhere to go. He looked at Harry's forehead, at the scar. You know the scar? People stare at it. Harry said, touching it without thinking. People will stare at it a great deal more when they know what you are. Lucifer said, and there was an edge in it, not a warning. A fact delivered with the precision of someone who had already decided how to feel about the staring. The question is whether you'll let the staring bother you. Does it bother you when people stare at you? I'm the devil. Lucifer said, spreading his hands. I'm used to having a reputation that precedes me by several thousand years. Harry thought about all the things he wanted to say to this and had the strange experience of not being able to choose between them because there were too many and they were all interesting. He landed on the practical one. The man, Dumbledore. The letter said, "You didn't say Dumbledore in the letter, but you said people who have kept you in the dark. That's who you meant." Lucifer's expression, which had been warm if careful, did something specific. It didn't harden exactly. It focused. Like a lens finding a point. "Albus Dumbledore," Lucifer said, and he said the name with the particular care of someone who has a list, and this name is on it. "Is the headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and one of the most powerful wizards alive, and a man who decided, without consulting anyone who might have disagreed, that the best thing for the wizarding world's hope and savior was to be raised by people who feared and resented him, kept ignorant of his nature, his parents, his history, and his power, in the belief that this would make him appropriately humble and appropriately desperate, and therefore appropriately controllable." The last word sat there. Harry felt something cold move through him, not the cold of the seal on the letter. Colder. The kind that starts somewhere specific in your chest. "He knew what I was," Harry said. "He knew about you. He knew about me. He erected enchantments around you that would have made it significantly harder for me to find you. Not impossible, I'm the devil, nothing is impossible for me, but difficult enough to buy years. He arranged for letters from Hogwarts to be your formal introduction to the magical world, timed, controlled, presenting him as the gateway to your identity." Lucifer's voice was even. Even in the way that a very calm, very deep body of water is even, and you should not mistake the stillness for shallowness. He intended to introduce you to your history on his schedule. His terms. His framing. And instead I got your letter. The enchantments have a shelf life. 11 was always the limit, the age at which your magical signature would become too distinct to mask, and I have resources that are fairly good at pattern recognition. He paused. "And the Hogwarts letter? You should know, the letter exists. It was sent. He intended it to arrive. But yours got there first." "Mine got there first," Lucifer confirmed. "By about." He checked a watch that Harry now noticed was extraordinarily beautiful and probably older than most countries. 40 minutes. Harry sat with this. He thought about Dumbledore, a name he'd heard once or twice in passing, a figure he'd built no real picture of. He tried to feel the appropriate outrage and found something more complicated than outrage, something colder and more specific. Clarity, maybe. The particular feeling of a puzzle clicking. He thought he was doing the right thing. Harry said. Lucifer tilted his head. "What makes you say that?" "Because if he was doing the wrong thing and knew it, he'd have been more careful. He'd have covered more tracks. But he left enough for you to find, for the enchantments to expire, because some part of him was certain enough that it would all work out the way he planned that he didn't think he needed to be airtight." Harry looked at the polished bar top. "That's worse, actually. Selfish is easier to hate than certain." Lucifer looked at his son for a long, still moment. "You're extraordinary," he said quietly. "You said that already, basically. I'm saying it more specifically now." Lucifer straightened. "Dumbledore will send someone. The Hogwarts letter wasn't responded to. In his plan, it was the hook that brought you in. When it doesn't get a response, he'll escalate. Probably the groundskeeper first, a man named Hagrid, large, well-meaning, completely devoted to Dumbledore. Then someone more official. Then himself. What do I do when they come? What do you want to do?" Harry thought about it. Really thought about it, not the reflexive answer, not the polite one, but the real one. "What did you want?" "I want to go to Hogwarts," he said. "I want to learn magic. I want to know what I am." He looked up. "But I want it on my terms. Not as someone's, what did you call it, chess piece." Lucifer smiled, and this time it reached his eyes fully, and what was in his eyes when it did was something vast and warm and old, like light from a star that's been burning for longer than the earth has existed. "That," he said, is an entirely reasonable position. And I intend to support it in my own particular way. Your own particular way, Harry repeated. What does that mean? It means, Lucifer said, pushing off from the bar and moving toward the stage, where the grand piano sat waiting, that Albus Dumbledore is about to discover that the pieces on his board are not his to move, and that some of them have, shall we say, arrangements that predate his carefully constructed game by several thousand years. He sat at the piano bench, settled himself, and put his hands on the keys with the ease of someone who has been doing this since before music was written down. It means that hell has a prince, and that prince has been kept from his father by a man who should have known better. What does hell do? Harry asked, watching him. When it decides someone should have known better? The first notes of something filled the jazz club, not a dramatic crash of sound, but something deliberate and measured and quietly enormous, like the first movement of a tide. Well, Lucifer said, without looking up from the keys, that rather depends on how patient I'm feeling. He played for a minute, maybe two, and Harry sat at the bar and listened, and outside on Denmark Street the morning went on as mornings do, entirely unaware that somewhere in a jazz club with a blue door, a boy who had spent 11 years being told he was ordinary was sitting with the knowledge that he was nothing of the kind, and feeling, for the first time in his life, not frightened by it, but satisfied. Like a flame that's been kept just below burning, finally given enough air. He went back to Privet Drive that evening. He didn't know why, exactly. He could have not. Lucifer had offered, carefully, without pressure, giving him the option without making it a choice between one man's claim and the life he already had. You can stay, he'd said. But you could also go back, and let things unfold, and come back to me when you need to. He'd said it like he meant it, which Harry found he appreciated more than if he'd been eager about it. Harry went back. He went back and he made dinner because it was his turn, and he ate at the kitchen table with the Dursleys in the usual silence, and Dudley complained about the chicken, and Vernon watched him with the narrow wariness he'd always had, and Petunia didn't look at him directly once. He went upstairs and lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. He thought about his mother. About a girl who had walked into a bar and looked at the devil, and said, "You need someone who won't believe what you say about yourself," and sat down. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry and settled on something in between, a private, fierce sort of pride in her. She had known. She had chosen. That mattered in a way he couldn't quite articulate yet, but felt in his chest as something permanent and load-bearing. He thought about Dumbledore, still an abstract, still a name without a face, and the thing that Harry felt about him was not yet anger. It was something quieter. An intention. The intention of a person who has been given information and plans to do something specific with it, and doesn't need to be loud about it. He reached under his pillow and took out the letter. Read it once more. Folded it back. Come when you're ready. The door will know you. Harry put the letter away and closed his eyes. 3 days later, the first owl arrived. It came in the morning, tapping at the kitchen window with the authority of something that had been sent by someone who expected compliance, and Vernon had gone a remarkable color when he saw it, and had tried to block the window, and the owl, a large, very official-looking tawny one, had simply moved to the next window, and then the back door, and then, when Vernon attempted to physically redirect it toward the garden, had nipped him firmly on the thumb and deposited the envelope on Harry's cereal bowl with a finality that discouraged argument. Harry picked it up. Parchment. Green ink. Wax seal, a badger, a lion, an eagle, a snake arranged around an H. Mr. H. Potter, it said. The second bedroom, number 4, Privet Drive. He turned it over. Then he put it in his pocket. Aren't you going to open it? Petunia said. Her voice was strange. Later, Harry said. He ate the rest of his cereal. I'm going out today. He went to Denmark Street. The Hogwarts letter came, he said, sitting at the bar while Lucifer made coffee with the focused attention of a man who has decided that if he must exist in the mortal world, coffee will be one of the things he does correctly. I expected it would. Lucifer set a cup in front of him, then seemed to remember something. Right, yes, you're 11. He retrieved the cup and replaced it with juice. Do you want to open it here? I already know what's in it, Harry said. More or less. You do. Do you know what you're going to do about it? Harry thought about it. The jazz club was quiet in the morning, no other patrons yet, just the two of them and the piano and the light coming through windows that definitely looked different from outside than in. I'm going to go, Harry said. To Hogwarts. Good. But I'm going to go as myself. He looked at Lucifer. Not as whoever Dumbledore has planned for me to be. I'm going to go knowing what I know. Lucifer looked at him steadily. And knowing what you know, what do you know, Harry? Harry picked up the juice glass and looked at the light through it for a moment. I know who my father is, he said. I know who my mother was. I know someone tried to manage me before I was old enough to object, and I know they failed. He set the glass down. And I know that whatever happens next, the sorting, the classes, the castle, Dumbledore, none of it is more powerful than the thing they were trying to keep under wraps. He looked at his hand, at the way the light seemed to catch the edge of it slightly wrong, slightly too bright, the way it had always done when he was emotional and had never had an explanation. I don't know what I can do yet. But I'm not scared of it. Lucifer was quiet for a moment. I'm going to send someone with you, he said. Not to protect you. You don't need protection. But as a presence. A reminder that there are other parties with an interest in how you're treated. Who? Her name is Mazikeen. He said it with the careful neutrality of someone choosing words about a subject that doesn't have easy words. She works for me. She is extremely capable, extremely direct, and she will be deeply, personally offended by anyone who tries to manipulate you. He paused. She may also, occasionally, threaten to remove limbs. I'll speak to her about that. Will she listen? Lucifer considered this with what appeared to be genuine uncertainty. Probably not, he admitted, but the gesture is important. Harry thought about this and found that he did not particularly mind. Outside on Denmark Street, a pigeon landed on the windowsill, looked in, and then left with the speed of something that had seen something it would be thinking about later. The morning ticked forward. In the wizarding world, Albus Dumbledore had received a report from his tracking enchantments that something in the patterns around number 4 had changed, and he was sitting behind his desk with Fawkes on the perch beside him and his fingers steepled, thinking. And in the space of his thinking there was something new, the first faint, exploratory thread of concern. At number 4, a letter sat unopened on a countertop. At a jazz club on Denmark Street with a blue door, Harry Potter, Harry Morningstar, though he hadn't tried that name yet, just been aware of it as a thing that existed, was sitting at a bar with his father and learning that the silence Dumbledore had built around him, carefully and with excellent intentions, had a crack in it. And through the crack, light was coming through. The kind that had been there all along. Chapter 2. The King Below. Mazikeen arrived at the jazz club the next morning without knocking. This wasn't unusual. Harry would come to understand that Maze treated doors as suggestions and knocking as something other people did, but it was his first time meeting her, and the impression she made was immediate and specific and not easily revised. She was not what he'd expected. He'd built some kind of picture overnight, lying in Dudley's old room thinking about an entity named Mazikeen who worked for the devil and occasionally threatened to remove limbs. The picture had involved something more, overtly monstrous. More horns, maybe? More obvious wrongness. Maze was beautiful the way the edge of a knife is beautiful, precise, intentional, and primarily designed to cut. She was average height, dark-haired, and wearing a leather jacket over a black tank top, and she moved through the room the way water moves through a space, finding the efficient path without appearing to think about it. Her eyes were dark and they landed on Harry with the flat, assessing quality of someone reading a situation for threats, and then she turned to Lucifer and said, in a voice that had no particular accent but felt ancient anyway. That's him. Evidently, Lucifer said. He was at the piano again. He seemed to spend mornings at the piano. Harry had decided this was a character trait rather than a habit. Maze walked up to Harry and looked at him with no apparent concern for whether he found this comfortable. "You're smaller than I thought," she said. "Everyone keeps saying that," Harry said. "Are you going to be a problem? For who?" She looked at him for another moment, and then something in her expression shifted, not softened, exactly, but recalibrated. Like he'd passed a test he hadn't known he was taking. "Good answer," she said, and went to the bar and helped herself to something from a bottle that Harry strongly suspected was not juice. "Maze," Lucifer said, without turning from the piano. "It's 9 in the morning. It's always 9 in the morning somewhere," she said. "And I just spent an hour on the tube. You hate public transport. I hate everything above ground equally. The tube is just concentrated." She drank, set the glass down, and looked at Harry again. "So. Hogwarts." "Hogwarts," Harry agreed. "And Dumbledore." "And Dumbledore." "I know about Dumbledore," Maze said, with the specific tone of someone who knows about a great many things and finds most of them manageable. "Old wizard. Very powerful. Very convinced he's the smartest person in any room he's ever been in." "Is he?" Harry asked. "The smartest person?" Maze glanced at Lucifer's back. Then back at Harry. "Not anymore," she said. The business of getting Harry what he needed for Hogwarts took 2 days and was, in its own way, instructive. Lucifer took him to Diagon Alley the morning after Maze arrived, and Harry's first experience of the Wizarding World's commercial center was filtered through the experience of walking into it beside his father. They went through the Leaky Cauldron, a dim, crowded pub that went completely, categorically silent the moment Lucifer walked in, with the particular silence of a room full of people who all feel something simultaneously and cannot immediately identify what. And Lucifer smiled at the room pleasantly, and the room did not smile back so much as collectively attempt to be as small as possible. "Do they know who you are?" Harry asked quietly as they passed through toward the back. "Most people have a sense," Lucifer said. "It's not recognition exactly. More like, you know when you're walking down a street and you feel, suddenly and certainly, that something very large is sharing the space? That instinct exists for a reason. And they all just felt it." "They all just felt it," Lucifer confirmed, and tapped the brick wall with the neatness of someone who has done things with much less ceremony, and the wall opened. Harry had expected to be surprised. He was surprised anyway. The alley expanded outward with the particular miracle of a world that doesn't bother hiding what it is, and it was loud and colorful and smelled of parchment and something herbal and something sweeter underneath, and people moved through it with the easy confidence of people for whom this was simply Tuesday. He looked at all of it and felt something open in his chest, the specific feeling of a door that has been stuck for a long time finally giving way. "Wand first," Lucifer said. "Everything else follows from that." They went to Ollivander's. The shop was narrow and dusty and smelled of sawdust and something resinous, and the old man who appeared from between the shelves looked at Harry first with the professional focus of someone assessing a new variable, and then his gaze slid to Lucifer, and he went still in a way that was different from the Leaky Cauldron crowd. Not the collective instinct of a group, but the specific stillness of an individual who knows something precisely, and is deciding what to do with the knowledge. "Mr. Potter," Ollivander said. "We wondered when you'd come." "Mr. Ollivander," Lucifer said pleasantly. "Lovely shop." "Thank you," Ollivander said faintly. He seemed to be operating on 2 levels simultaneously, the professional surface of a man who fits wands, and something beneath it that was processing information rapidly. He looked at Harry again, and his pale eyes were doing something complicated. Yes, I see. Well," he collected himself. "Let's find your wand, Mr. Potter." The wand process was interesting. Harry tried 7 before the 8th one responded, and when it did, the response was not the shower of sparks that Ollivander seemed to expect. The response was a warm pulse of light that came not just from the wand tip but from Harry's hand as well, running up between his fingers like something recognizing something, and the light was gold and red and, at the very edges, a deep amber that matched his father's eyes exactly. Ollivander looked at this for a long time. Holly and phoenix feather, he said. 11 inches. Pliable. He hesitated. Curious. Very curious. What's curious? Harry asked. The phoenix feather in your wand. It shares a core with one other. The wand belonging to the wizard who gave you your scar. Ollivander looked at him steadily. Though I confess, given recent information, I now wonder whether the feather chose as wisely as it believed. He looked at Lucifer when he said it. It chose exceptionally well, Lucifer said, and he was looking at Harry, not Ollivander, when he said it. They bought robes at Madame Malkin's, where Harry was measured by a woman with pins in her mouth who kept glancing at Lucifer with the expression of someone who has decided to concentrate very hard on her work. They bought books at Flourish and Blots. Lucifer bought extra, things not on the list, arithmancy texts and a slim volume on the theory of magical inheritance that he placed in the pile without comment. They bought a cauldron, ingredients, scales, and a telescope that Harry chose himself because he liked the weight of it. They did not buy an owl. Harry had said he didn't want one and Lucifer had not pushed. The last stop was Gringotts. This was different. The goblins looked at Lucifer the way the rest of the alley didn't, not with instinctive fear, not with awe, but with the flat professional interest of beings who are very old and have encountered very many things and file them accordingly. The goblin at the central desk looked at him and said, without any particular inflection, "We've been expecting a Morningstar account." "I should hope so," Lucifer said. "I sent a representative 600 years ago." "We have the paperwork," the goblin said. "It's ready." Harry got his vault, inherited from Lily, substantial, and with the peculiar quality of money that has been sitting in one place for a long time and developing a kind of gravity. And he also got something else, which came in a separate box brought by a different goblin who carried it with the care of someone transporting something unpredictable. The box held a key. Black iron, not unlike the handle of the blue door on Denmark Street. "What's this?" Harry asked. "The Morningstar account," the goblin said, looking at him with the kind of directness that goblins achieve and most people don't. "Opened in your name, on instruction left with us before your birth." Harry looked at the key. Looked at Lucifer. "You arranged this before I was born," he said. "Before you were born," Lucifer confirmed. He said it without apology and without ceremony. "I told you. Your mother and I both knew what you'd be. We made arrangements. You both planned for me. We both planned for you." Harry closed his fingers around the key and felt the cold that wasn't cold of it, and thought about 2 people in a bar 6 hours of conversation ago, and a girl who sat down with the devil because she thought he needed someone who wouldn't believe the version he told about himself, and the something that came from that time, and the something was him, and they had planned for him, both of them, before he'd existed to be planned for. He put the key in his pocket. He didn't trust his expression for a moment, so he looked at the vaulted ceiling of Gringotts, which was impressive and gave him something to look at that wasn't his father. Then he looked at his father. "Thank you," he said. Lucifer made a small motion with his head that was not quite a nod, more like an acknowledgement of a significant thing, handled briefly because the depth of it didn't need volume to be real. "Come on," he said. "I'll buy you lunch. There's a decent place that doesn't close the kitchen before noon." "Is there food in hell?" Harry asked, following him toward the doors. "There is excellent food in hell," Lucifer said, with the conviction of a man who has made this case before. "What do you think I've been doing down there for thousands of years?" They were back at Denmark Street by early afternoon, and it was Maze who told him, which in retrospect made sense. Lucifer would have framed it, Maze just said it. She was cleaning something that Harry chose not to look at too directly, and she said, without preamble, while Harry was sitting at the bar eating a sandwich, "Dumbledore sent Hagrid this morning. He went to Privet Drive." Harry looked at her. "How do you know?" "I have contacts," she said, which was not an explanation and was clearly intended not to be. "What happened?" "Your aunt panicked. Your uncle tried to explain about the Hogwarts letter, but Hagrid already had one, Apparently Dumbledore had anticipated that the first one might not get through. She set down whatever she was cleaning. So there's now a very large man sitting in your kitchen explaining to your aunt and uncle about the wizarding world and wondering where you are. He'll tell Dumbledore I'm gone, Harry said. He'll tell Dumbledore you were gone, Lucifer said from the piano. He'd been playing intermittently, quiet background chords that shaped the air of the room without demanding attention. The question is what Dumbledore will do about it. He'll escalate, Harry said, remembering what Lucifer had told him 2 days ago. Hagrid first, then someone more official, then himself. Lucifer resolved the chord he'd been building and let it sit. He's a careful man. He'll probe before he commits. So what do we do? Harry asked. We let him probe, Lucifer said easily. And we let him find exactly what we want him to find. Which is a boy who has received a Hogwarts letter and intends to attend. A boy who is, as far as anyone can confirm, enthusiastic and cooperative and absolutely delighted to be part of the magical world. He turned on the bench and looked at Harry. What he won't find, initially, is what else that boy knows. Because that's not his to know yet. You want me to play along, Harry said. I want you to attend Hogwarts as a student, Lucifer said. Which you are. Everything you learn there is yours. Magic is yours. The friendships you make, the things you discover, none of that is a performance. The only thing I'm suggesting you don't volunteer is the context. He paused. Dumbledore will want to manage what you know about yourself. He will introduce that information on a schedule. Let him think his schedule is still operative, while you are actually operating on ours. Harry thought about this for a moment. He thought about it clearly and practically. And Maze comes with me. Maze comes with you, Lucifer said. In what capacity? Harry looked at Maze. You can't exactly be a student. Maze looked at him with extreme patience. I'm older than this country, she said. I'm not being a student. So what, a professor? I was thinking, Lucifer said carefully. Something more informal. A family associate, as it were. Someone present in the vicinity of Hogsmeade. Someone who can move freely. I can get into Hogwarts, Maze said flatly. Words don't really work on me. They don't? Harry asked. I'm a demon, she said, like this was self-evident. Wards are human magic. They keep out humans and human-adjacent things. She's not human-adjacent, Lucifer confirmed. I'll be around, Maze said. When you need me, I'll be there. Otherwise, I'll be outside, being patient. She said patient the way someone says a word in a foreign language they find faintly absurd. Will you actually be patient? Harry asked. Maze picked up her cleaning again. I'll be relatively stationary, she said, which was the closest she appeared to go to yes. Dumbledore came himself on the 4th day. Not in person, not at Denmark Street, which Harry suspected he hadn't found. He came to Privet Drive, which Harry was still returning to every evening out of a habit he was in the process of deciding whether to break, and which meant he was there when the knock came at 8 in the evening and Vernon opened the door, and whatever he said to the man on the other side worked in approximately 0 seconds. Harry was upstairs. He heard the knock, heard the door, heard the quality of Vernon's silence change, from territorial to genuinely uncertain, which almost never happened, and came to the top of the stairs. Albus Dumbledore looked up at him from the hallway. He was tall. Old. The kind of old that isn't declining but has passed through declining and out the other side into something else, a distilled quality, essence of age without its frailty. His beard was silver and long and his eyes were blue and they were sharp in a way that Harry immediately registered, because sharp was something he understood. His father's eyes were sharp, Maze's were sharp, but theirs was the sharpness of things that knew what they were. Dumbledore's sharpness was the sharpness of someone taking inventory. Harry, he said warmly, and even in that warmth there was something measuring. I'm so glad you're home. I was beginning to worry. I went to London, Harry said. He came down 3 stairs, not all the way down. Sightseeing, Ah. Dumbledore's smile reached his eyes, but his eyes didn't change. May I come in? It's his house, Harry said, nodding at Vernon. Vernon, who would under any other circumstances have been delighted to eject a strange old man in purple robes from his doorstep, looked between Dumbledore and Harry with the expression of someone caught between two tides and said, Yes, come in then. They sat in the sitting room. Petunia appeared with tea she hadn't been asked for. Vernon sat in his chair and said nothing, which was the most useful thing he'd contributed to Harry's life in a decade. Dumbledore looked at Harry with the warmth of someone who has decided how this conversation goes. I imagine you have questions, he said. A few, Harry said. About the magical world, about Hogwarts, it must all be quite overwhelming. I've had a few days, Harry said. I'm mostly caught up. Something moved in Dumbledore's expression, very slight, very controlled, but Harry saw it. The inventory sharpening. Caught up? Dumbledore said pleasantly. How do you mean? I mean I've done some reading, Harry said. Which was true. Lucifer had bought him books, and he'd read 2 of them cover to cover and skimmed the rest. I know what Hogwarts is, what the houses are, basic wand theory. I've been to Diagon Alley. Have you? The warmth again, the smile. On your own? That's very resourceful. I had help, Harry said. Oh? And there it was, the lightest possible elevation in tone, barely perceptible. From whom? A family contact? Harry said. Silence. The kind that has an agenda. Harry, Dumbledore said, setting his cup down, I want you to know that I am here for you. Not just as the headmaster of the school you'll be attending, but as, well, as someone who has been watching over you for a long time. I feel a certain personal responsibility for your well-being. That's very kind, Harry said. You've had a difficult childhood. Living here. A glance at the room, tactful and devastating. Wasn't what I would have chosen for you, given the choice. But I made the decisions I made because I believed they were best for your safety. I hope, in time, you'll understand that. And there it was, offered so naturally, so warmly, so genuinely that it would have worked on almost anyone who hadn't spent 4 days processing the same information from a different angle. The preemptive justification. The positioning of his choices as protective rather than controlling. The establishment of himself as someone with Harry's best interests at heart, front-loaded, so that any contradictory information would have to work against this already established feeling. Harry looked at the old man and thought, You're good at this. And then he thought, But you're talking to the wrong person. I appreciate that, Harry said. I have a question. Of course. My parents. My mother, can you tell me about her? Dumbledore's face did something that Harry had been watching for, the slight tension of a man deciding which version of the truth to give. Your mother was Lily Potter, née Evans, Dumbledore said. A remarkable witch. One of the most talented I've ever had the pleasure of teaching. She was kind, clever, brave in ways that surprised people who hadn't looked closely enough. He paused. She and your father James were in the Order of the Phoenix, our organization against Voldemort. They were wonderful people who died protecting you. Every word technically true. Harry sat with the shape of what was being left out, the gap where who Lily really was would fit, the careful omission of the year between Hogwarts and marriage, the absence of any detail that might lead anywhere Dumbledore didn't want him to go. What was she like? Harry asked. As a person. Not just the brave, clever version. Dumbledore looked at him for a moment. She had a remarkable gift, he said, choosing this carefully, for seeing people clearly. She didn't make assumptions. She surprised people. Herself sometimes, I think. He said it like a fond anecdote. He didn't know he was describing the quality that had led Lily Evans to sit down with the devil in a bar and say you need someone who won't believe what you say about yourself. She sounds brilliant, Harry said. She was, Dumbledore said. Harry looked at him steadily. I'm looking forward to Hogwarts, he said. I'd like to go. Wonderful. The warmth again, fuller now, the inventory satisfied. We'll arrange everything. The term starts on the 1st of September. Hagrid can accompany. I'll get there myself, Harry said. Thank you. Dumbledore paused. Of course. Of course. Though if you'd like company, I'm fine, Harry said. I've been managing on my own for a long time. I'm good at it. He said it pleasantly. He meant it as a statement of fact. He watched Dumbledore process the slight edges in it, and decide, correctly, not to push. Well, Dumbledore said, and stood, and the room felt different when he was standing, larger and smaller at once. I'm glad we had this conversation, Harry. I hope you'll feel free to come to me with anything. Any questions, any concerns. I'll keep that in mind, Harry said. He told Lucifer that night, in the club, sitting at the bar while Maze ate something that Harry chose not to ask about, and Lucifer listened with his hands flat on the bar and his expression doing the controlled, focused thing. He's running a specific script, Harry said. Establishing trust first, so that everything else filters through it. The headmaster who cares, the man who sacrificed something to keep me safe, he's setting himself up as the only reliable narrator of my own life. And? Lucifer said. And he has no idea it's already too late, Harry said. I already have the other narrators. Maze made a noise that might have been approval. He'll try again, Lucifer said. He'll be more careful. Do not underestimate him, Harry. He is genuinely brilliant and genuinely committed to his view of how this should go, and those two things together are more dangerous than malice. Malice makes mistakes. Conviction is patient. I know, Harry said. I'm not underestimating him. He thought about the blue eyes and the inventory sharpness. I'm being accurate about him. There's a difference. Lucifer looked at him. Fair. Can I ask you something? Harry said. You may ask me anything. When you found out what Dumbledore did, setting the enchantments, controlling the access to me, what did you feel? Lucifer was quiet for a moment. Maze had gone still. I felt, Lucifer said with the measured delivery of someone translating from a language that doesn't have the right words, that a great many things I have done in my extremely long existence that I regret were made explicable, to me, by the fact that I have a temper that, when engaged, is difficult to redirect toward mercy. He looked at Harry. I felt that if I acted on what I felt, the resulting situation would be significantly more complicated than what you're trying to navigate. So you chose not to act on it, Harry said. Yet, Lucifer agreed. What's the yet for? The amber eyes met his, and in them was something that was not warmth but was not cold either. It was the quality of a very controlled and very serious promise. Because I intend to give Dumbledore the opportunity to demonstrate whether his intelligence extends to knowing when to stop, Lucifer said. And if it doesn't. He let that sit for a moment. Then the yet becomes now. Harry thought about what now would look like, coming from his father, and felt two things simultaneously, the sensible, grounded awareness that this should perhaps concern him, and a deeper, warmer thing that was simply the feeling of being backed, fully and without condition, by something that would not be moved. He'd never had that before. He hadn't known how solid it felt from the inside. Okay, he said. I have one more question. Ask. What am I? I mean, specifically. What can I do? What will I be able to do? He looked at his hand, at the perpetual slight excess of light at the edges of him when he was emotional. I know I'm a wizard. But that's not all. No, Lucifer said. It's not all. He stood, moved around the bar, and sat on the stool beside Harry. This was close, the closest they'd been since that first meeting, and Harry registered the particular pressure of being near something ancient without the filter of the bar between them. Not threatening. Just significant, the way standing near the ocean is significant. You're a wizard, Lucifer said, which you get from your mother, and it will work the way it works for any witch or wizard, obedient to training and intention and practice. But underneath that, threaded through it, you carry something else. You carry what I am. Which is light, technically. I know that's surprising given the branding. The morning star. I was the brightest of the angels before I fell, and what I am at my core, stripped of everything else, is light. Brilliance. The capacity to illuminate. His voice was even, but under it was something that Harry was beginning to recognize as the version of Lucifer that existed before performance, the one his mother had found in a bar. In you, that manifests as, we won't know the full extent until it develops, and development requires practice and pressure. But what you already have, the light you've noticed at your edges, isn't a malfunction. It's expression. You are, even at rest, difficult to entirely contain. Is that dangerous? To you? No. Lucifer paused. To anyone who forgets it. And hell? Harry said. What does it mean, that I'm your son, to hell? To the people there. The lords of hell are ancient. Lucifer said. Older than most things. They have their own hierarchies, their own politics, their own petty disagreements that have been running for millennia. But on the matter of my bloodline, something moved in his face, something proud and old. On the matter of family, they are unified in a way they are unified on almost nothing else. You are my son. What happens to you matters to all of them. So when Dumbledore kept you from me, Lucifer said, he didn't just slight me. In the understanding of the lords of hell, he offended the bloodline. He touched something that is not his to touch. He looked at Harry with the particular quiet of someone whose patience is genuine and finite in equal measure. They are watching. And they are waiting to see what becomes of you. Harry sat with this. No pressure, he said. Maze snorted. It was the first time she'd made a sound in 20 minutes, and the sound was brief and genuine, and Harry decided that whatever Maze's approval sounded like, that was probably it. None at all, Lucifer agreed, and the corner of his mouth moved. The days before September 1st organized themselves differently than Harry expected. He'd anticipated waiting, the grinding, familiar privet drive waiting that had characterized most of his life, time moving through treacle while something better stayed just out of reach. Instead, the days were full. Mornings at Denmark Street, Lucifer teaching him things that were not on any Hogwarts syllabus, not in any systematic way but in the way of a person who finds certain things interesting and can't help explaining them, which meant Harry got a working understanding of the theory of magical intent, an explanation of why phoenix feathers conduct celestial energy more efficiently than any other core material, and 3 extended conversations about music in which Harry said mostly nothing and Lucifer said a great deal, and somehow by the end of each one Harry understood something he hadn't before. Afternoons were Maze's domain. She taught him nothing in the formal sense. She put him in situations. She took him to a park near Denmark Street and told him to move a specific rock with his wand, and when he pointed out he hadn't had a single lesson yet, she said, "That's the point," and watched him with the flat assessment of someone very interested in what you do when you have no external framework to fall back on. He moved the rock on the 3rd try. It wasn't clean, the rock skidded and hit a bin, but it moved, and Maze made the small noise again and said, "You don't hesitate after the first failure. That's good. Is hesitation the problem most people have? Most people hesitate after failure because they've decided the failure means something about them," she said. "It doesn't. It just means you haven't found the angle yet. Did Lucifer teach you that?" She was quiet for a moment. "He showed me," she said, which was different. On the last day of August, Harry went back to Privet Drive, packed his trunk, and stood in the 2nd bedroom for a moment looking at the room. Broken toys. Crayon marks on the door frame that were Dudley's, years old. The window that looked out over the garden where he'd spent more hours than he could count pulling weeds and being outside because inside was worse. He picked up the trunk. He went downstairs. Petunia was in the kitchen. She turned when she heard him. "You're going," she said. "I'm going." She looked at him for a long moment, really looked at him, the way she almost never did. Her eyes were wet at the edges. Harry found he didn't know what to do with that, and didn't try to do anything in particular. She would have been. Petunia started, and stopped, and tried again. Lily would have been. Another stop. Proud was the word she was working toward. Harry could see it sitting there, inaccessible. I know, Harry said. He said it gently, which surprised him, but the person in front of him wasn't the woman who had diminished him for a decade, not right now. Right now it was a woman who had lost her sister and been handed a child she didn't know how to love and had been afraid of both things in ways she'd never examined and was now watching the consequence of all of that walk out the front door. He could afford to be gentle. Take care of yourself, Petunia said. I will, Harry said. He left. He went back to Denmark Street that evening and they ate at the bar, real food, which Lucifer had procured from somewhere that had an impressive view of its own kitchen, and Maze sat on the other side of the bar and argued with Lucifer about something Harry eventually identified as a 600-year-old wager. And the argument was heated and specific and occasionally switched into a language that Harry suspected was older than English by a significant margin. He watched them and thought, this is what I'm going to. Not just Hogwarts. Not just magic. He was going towards something that had been waiting for him, and behind him was this: the jazz club, the piano, the ancient demon and the fallen angel arguing about a bet from the 15th century, and it was his. Actually his. Not assigned to him, not managed for him. His because he'd walked through a blue door and sat at a bar and been willing to hear the truth in a letter. You'll be all right, Maze said suddenly, looking at him directly. The argument with Lucifer had stopped as if it had never been. Harry looked at her. At Hogwarts, she said. You'll be fine. I know, he said. I'm not worried, she said. Clearly and specifically not worried, in the way of someone who is saying the thing they are. I know, he said again. She looked at him for another moment, and then looked away and picked up her drink, and Lucifer was watching Harry from the other side of the bar with the amber eyes and the expression that was not quite a smile but was something better, something warmer and more real and less performed. You know what you are, Lucifer said. Not a question. Getting there, Harry said. Good enough, Lucifer said. That's all you need for now. The rest develops with practice and pressure, Harry finished. You said? I say many things, Lucifer acknowledged. Most of them worth hearing. Harry laughed. It was the first time he'd laughed properly in, he didn't know how long. The sound surprised him, and then it didn't. Outside, London went on being London, indifferent and enormous and entirely unaware that tomorrow morning a boy with his father's eyes and his mother's precision and 11 years of compressed certainty about his own strangeness was going to walk onto platform 9 3/4 and step into a world that had no idea what was coming. The stars were out. Harry could see them through the jazz club's windows, the ones that looked different from outside, and they were sharp and close in the way stars get when the air is clear, and among them one was brighter than the others, the one that is always brighter, the one that rises just before dawn. He looked at it for a while. He was ready. Chapter 3. The boy who burned platform 9 3/4 existed in the specific way that impossible things exist when they've been around long enough, not dramatically, not with fanfare, but with the settled confidence of something that has never needed to justify itself. Harry pushed through the barrier between platforms 9 and 10 with his trunk and found the Scarlet Engine and the crowd and the noise, and stood for a moment just breathing it in. Families everywhere. Kids his age dragging trunks and arguing with siblings and wearing the slightly stunned expression of people who had grown up with this, and still found it remarkable every September. Owls in cages making their feelings known. A smell of coal smoke and something sweeter underneath. He'd smelled it in Diagon Alley too, that particular magical undercurrent that wasn't quite anything else. He found a compartment 2/3 down the train, stowed his trunk, and sat by the window. He watched the platform. He was looking for Dumbledore without meaning to, the tall silver figure somewhere in the crowd, but if Dumbledore was there he was being invisible about it, and Harry decided that wasn't unlikely. He was watching a family with red hair, an enormous quantity of red hair, distributed across what appeared to be 6 children and 2 adults, navigate a particularly complicated trunk situation, when the compartment door opened. A boy looked in. Red-haired himself, freckled, with the slightly uncertain energy of someone who has checked every other compartment, and would rather share this one than admit he ran out of options. "Is it okay if I sit here? Everywhere else is full." "Sure," Harry said. The boy dragged his trunk in with some effort, got it approximately stowed, and dropped into the seat across from Harry with the boneless relief of someone who has resolved a social problem. "Ron Weasley," he said. "Harry Potter." Ron's eyes went to his forehead, automatic, involuntary, the same quick look everyone did, and then back to his face with the effort of someone being polite about it. "Sorry," Ron said. "Everyone does that, yeah? I'm getting used to it," Harry said. "Right, yeah." Ron seemed to relax slightly. "You going in as a first year too?" "Yes." "Same. My brothers all went. Charlie, Bill, Percy, Fred and George. Percy's head boy this year actually, which he's been insufferable about since July, which in Weasley family terms means—" He stopped. "Sorry. I talk a lot when I'm nervous." "I notice," Harry said. "I don't mind." Ron looked at him for a second. "You seem very calm," he said. "For someone who's just found out they're a wizard and they're going to magic school. I had a few days to process. Still, when I found out, I mean, I've always known, obviously, but first day at Hogwarts still does something to you." He pulled a squashed parcel from his jacket pocket. "Want a sandwich?" "Mum packs too many." Harry took the sandwich. "It was excellent." "He said so." "She's a good cook," Ron said, in the way people say things about their families that are simple and profound at the same time. The train moved. The platform slid away. London dissolved into the outskirts of London and then into the green, rolling transition of countryside, and Harry sat with his half of the sandwich and the easy silence of two people who have decided, without discussing it, that they will get along. "Can I ask you something?" Ron said, when they were solidly into countryside. "You're going to anyway," Harry said. Ron grinned. It was a good grin, open, no artifice. "What's it like, finding out you're a wizard? When you didn't grow up knowing?" Harry thought about this. The real version, not the managed one. "It was less surprising than you'd think," he said. "More confirming. Like the puzzle had always had a shape and the piece just arrived. Because of all the accidental magic? Partly." He paused. "And partly because I already knew I was different. I just didn't have the right word for it." Ron ate his sandwich. "Different how?" "Things happened around me that didn't make sense otherwise. And people they treated me like something they needed to manage rather than someone they needed to know. Which is its own kind of signal." Ron looked at him with the uncomplicated directness of someone who hasn't learned yet to be politic. "The Dursleys sound awful." "They were what they were," Harry said. Which was the truest thing he could say about them and the least weighted, and felt, for the first time, like a thing he'd put down rather than a thing he was carrying. The door slid open again and a girl looked in, brown hair, slightly wild, an expression of focused purpose. "Have either of you seen a toad? A boy named Neville has lost one." "No toad," Ron said. "I haven't seen one either," Harry said. "But if it's on this train it's probably in one of the middle compartments. Toads tend toward the middle of things." The girl blinked at him. That's a reasonable inference." "He's like that," Ron said, with the easy familiarity of someone who has known Harry for 40 minutes and already considers this established fact. "Hermione Granger," she said, coming in and sitting down with the decisiveness of someone who has made a social calculation and executed it. "I've read almost all the textbooks already." "Have you?" "I've been practicing some of the basic spells. Wingardium Leviosa is straightforward enough once you understand that the wrist movement isn't decorative. I haven't had any lessons," Harry said. "Neither have I," Ron said. "Well, technically neither have I," Hermione said. "But I've read about them, which is almost as good. What house do you think you'll be sorted into?" I've read about the houses. Gryffindor sounds by far the best. Helga Hufflepuff always seemed to me to be the most genuinely good person of the four founders, but Gryffindor's values are Hermione," Harry said. She stopped. "The toad?" he said. She blinked. Then the expression on her face rearranged itself and she laughed, short, genuine, a little surprised at herself. "Right. Yes." She stood. "I'll go check the middle." She went. They heard her moving down the corridor with purpose. Ron looked at Harry. "I think I like her," he said, sounding slightly uncertain about it. "I think you're going to," Harry agreed. Hogwarts appeared out of the dark and the rain like something that hadn't been built so much as grown. Towers and battlements, and lit windows in no logical pattern, sprawling up from the lakeshore with the easy authority of a place that has been old for so long it has become geological. Harry looked at it from the boat and felt something specific. Not awe exactly, though it was awe-inducing, but recognition. The same feeling as the puzzle piece arriving. This place was supposed to be something to him. It was going to be. Hermione was in the boat beside him. She was looking at the castle with an expression he recognized, the expression of someone whose imagination has been running at something for months and is now confronting the reality, and finding it both more and exactly what they expected. "It's bigger," she said quietly, to no one in particular. "Always is," said the half-giant rowing the boat. Hagrid, Harry recognized, the large, well-meaning man from Petunia's kitchen. He'd registered Harry on the platform with a look that was warm and slightly complicated, and had said, "Good to see ya, Harry," with the feeling of someone saying a thing that has a history he's not mentioning, and Harry had said, "You too," and meant it in the straightforward sense, and let the rest sit. The sorting was what the sorting was. A room full of candles and a ceiling full of stars, not the actual sky, he'd read about this, an enchanted ceiling, though it was raining outside and the ceiling showed clear stars, which meant it was showing something other than the literal sky, and 1,000 students at 4 long tables and at the front, the high table, where the professors sat. Harry looked at Dumbledore first. The old man was at the center, robes of dark blue, watching the doors with that warm and calculating attention. When his gaze moved along the line of first years waiting to be sorted, it settled on Harry for one particular moment, a moment that had something personal in it, a kind of arrival, like someone checking a box they've been waiting to check. Harry held the eye contact for 3 full seconds, expression pleasant and open, and then looked away first. Not because he had to. Because he chose to. There was a difference. The hat was placed on each head in turn. The hat shouted its decisions. Students went to their tables to applause that varied in enthusiasm. "Granger, Hermione." Hermione walked up straight-backed and sat on the stool, and the hat went on her head, and there was a pause that stretched slightly longer than the previous ones, and then, "Gryffindor." She walked to the Gryffindor table looking like someone who has received confirmation of a hypothesis and is trying not to look smug about it, and Harry watched her go and thought, "Good." Several more names. Harry stopped listening to the individual ones and watched the room, watched the Slytherin table, a blond boy at the front with the easy posture of someone who has always had rooms organize themselves around him. Watched the teachers. Watched Dumbledore watching. Potter Harry. The room did what rooms do when this particular name is said in this particular context, a sound that was not quite quiet and not quite noise, 100 people processing the same piece of information in slightly different directions. He walked to the stool. Saturday. The hat was placed on his head. Darkness. The smell of old felt and older magic. And then a voice, dry, curious, ancient. "Well," said the sorting hat, inside his skull. "This is unexpected." Harry said nothing. He'd been told, in one of Lucifer's books, the one on magical inheritance, that the hat was a genuine intelligence, not merely a magical instrument. He treated it accordingly. "You're sharp," the hat said. "Most students think loudly when I put them on. You just wait." "I'm interested in what you find," Harry said, or thought, or whatever the mechanism was. "What I find," the hat repeated slowly, is something I have not encountered in my 1007 years of doing this job. You carry. There is a human magical signature, quite strong, but underneath it there is something, a pause that had weight to it. Something considerably older than I am. Yes, Harry confirmed. Are you going to tell me what? You already know, Harry said. Another pause. I do, the Hat admitted. I have a very comprehensive library, as it were. I know the signatures of most things that exist in this world and several that don't. Yours, it seemed to gather itself. I want to ask you something, and you can decline to answer. Go ahead. Does he know you're here? Your father? He knows, Harry said. We planned it together. The Hat was quiet for long enough that Harry became aware of the room outside, the darkness, the waiting, the murmuring, the particular silence of an audience watching something run longer than expected. Then let me tell you something, the Hat said, and its tone changed. It shed the professional assessor quality, and spoke the way very old things speak when they have set down their function for a moment, and are speaking plainly. I have seen things in this school that I could not prevent. I have sorted children who were being used as instruments, and could not warn them, because the sorting is not the place for warning. But you don't need a warning. You already know. A pause. I'm going to tell you one thing, and it's not about your house. Tell me. There is something in this school, left here by the man who taught here 50 years ago, hidden in the 7th floor. The dark wizard your mother died fighting. He isn't gone. He's closer to this place than anyone in this hall knows, and he has been since before the school year started. The Hat's voice was very quiet. You should know that. Whatever it means for whatever you are, you should know. Harry absorbed this. Thank you, he said. Don't thank me, the Hat said. Just be careful. And also, and here's something almost wry, entered the ancient voice. Gryffindor. The room exploded. Not in the way of polite enthusiasm. In the way of a room that has been watching something take longer than expected and has several theories about why, and has now been given a resolution that confirms some theories and raises new ones. The Gryffindor table made a noise that had actual physical presence. Ron was at it already and was clapping with his whole body. Hermione had both hands together in front of her like she was trying to contain it. Harry took the hat off and set it on the stool and looked at the high table. Dumbledore was smiling, warm and satisfied, and underneath both of those, something that Harry could now read, relieved. The piece was on the board. The chess game could proceed. Harry smiled back and went to the Gryffindor table. Wicked, Ron said with profound conviction. You were up there ages. What was it saying? Interesting things, Harry said. The common room was warm and full and smelled of old stone and fireplace. Harry sat in a chair by the fire while the room buzzed with the specific energy of beginnings, first years wide-eyed and upper years catching up, and everyone being loud in slightly different ways. Hermione sat beside him. She had a book open on her knee, but she wasn't reading it. You know, she said without looking at him, the hat usually takes about 30 seconds. I've heard. It took 4 minutes and 12 seconds with you. I counted. I noticed you counting, Harry said. She looked at him then. Her expression was the one he was learning, the one she wore when she decided to be direct. What was it saying? It had questions. About what? Harry considered her for a moment. Hermione Granger, who had read every textbook before the year started, who counted sorting times, who made reasonable inferences about toads. Who looked at him with the specific eyes of someone who would rather have an accurate picture of the world than a comfortable one. About what I am, he said. What you are, she repeated carefully. That's an interesting phrasing. It's the accurate one. She was quiet for a moment. Then, you're not just a wizard. It wasn't a question. He looked at her. No, he said. Not just. She held his gaze. Then she closed the book, which for Hermione Granger was an action of some significance, and said, I'm not going to pry. But I'm very good at researching things, and I'm going to research this, and when I figure out what you are, I hope you'll tell me if I'm wrong. I'll tell you if you're wrong, Harry said. And if I'm right? Then we'll have a conversation, Harry said. She seemed satisfied with this, or not satisfied precisely, but willing to operate within the terms. She opened the book again. Across the common room, Ron caught Harry's eye and mouthed something that took Harry a moment to translate. She's a bit intense, yeah? Harry shook his head slightly. Ron shrugged with the amiability of someone who is reserving judgment. Harry looked at the fire. He thought about what the hat had told him. The 7th floor. Something hidden. Voldemort, not gone, not dead, closer than anyone knew. And under the fire's warmth, under the noise of the room, under everything, he felt it for the first time, a faint pressure at his scar that wasn't pain but was related to pain the way a shadow is related to the thing casting it. Like something had become aware of him being here and was orienting toward that awareness. He pressed 2 fingers to his forehead lightly. No, he thought, clearly and with no particular heat. I see you too. The pressure receded. Classes started. Harry learned things. He learned that he was good at magic, not just competent, not just adequate, but the kind of good that made professors pause. He didn't hide this. Lucifer had said, before he left Denmark Street, do not make yourself small to make other people comfortable. You are what you are. Be it. So he was. In Transfiguration, Professor McGonagall turned her desk into a pig and back, and set them the task of turning a match into a needle. Harry had his fully transfigured, silver, sharp, correct, before anyone else had generated more than a vague metallic shimmer, and McGonagall looked at it with the expression of someone maintaining professionalism in the face of being genuinely impressed, and said, "Excellent, Mr. Potter," in a tone that meant more than it said. In Charms, Flitwick nearly fell off his books when Harry's Wingardium Leviosa not only elevated the feather but kept it suspended precisely 18 inches from the desk without apparent effort, as if it had found a stable position and decided to remain there. In Defense Against the Dark Arts, Professor Quirrell was nervous in the way of someone carrying something they haven't told anyone about, and Harry sat in the front row and watched the man with the specific interest of someone who has received relevant information from an ancient hat and is now correlating data. After the 3rd class, walking back through the corridor with Ron and Hermione, Ron said, "You know what you're doing seems very natural for someone who's never had a lesson." "Instinct, maybe," Harry said. "Most people's instincts for magic are completely wrong," Hermione said from the other side. "The wand movement has to override the instinct toward brute force. But yours looks like you were born with the right instinct." She said it casually. She was looking at her notes. Harry watched her process the implications of her own statement and file them. "Something like that," he said. "Dumbledore did not leave it at one visit." 8 days into term, Harry was summoned to the headmaster's office. He went without concern and without haste, which were things he suspected Dumbledore had expected to be reversed. The office was circular and warm and full of the accumulated weight of the many things Dumbledore kept in it: portraits of former headmasters, devices Harry didn't recognize making small motions behind glass, and Fawkes on the perch, who looked at Harry with the liquid interest of a creature that perceives more than it shows. Harry looked at Fawkes for a moment. Fawkes made a single, soft sound, not a song, just a note, and then was still. Harry. Dumbledore from behind the desk, gesturing to the chair opposite. "Sit, please. I hope you're settling in well." "Very well," Harry said, sitting. "Thank you. Your professors speak highly of you." "Most highly." Dumbledore's eyes were warm and doing the inventory thing. "Natural talent is a wonderful thing. Hard work helps," Harry said. "It certainly does." A slight smile. "I wanted to check in. It can be difficult, entering the magical world so late, not having grown up with it. Are there things you find confusing? Things you'd like to understand better?" He said it the way you say things when you're really asking something else. "I'm finding it very manageable," Harry said. "I've done a lot of reading." I noticed you had books beyond the standard list." "Someone recommended them?" "I came across them in Diagon Alley," Harry said. "Technically true," Flourish and Blots has a good selection. They do. Dumbledore was quiet for a moment, hands folded on the desk, projecting benign patience. The family contact you mentioned, at Privet Drive. You said someone helped you in Diagon Alley? Harry said. The silence extended. Dumbledore was testing to see if Harry would fill it. It was a basic interview technique. Let the silence create pressure and see what gets said into it. Harry did not fill it. I want you to know, Dumbledore said, with the gentle power of someone who has said this many times in many ways and means it absolutely, that I am here for you. Not merely as headmaster. I have known your family, your parents, and I feel a certain responsibility toward you that goes beyond the professional. That's very kind, Harry said. Again. Is there anything you'd like to ask me? About your parents, perhaps. About your history. And here it was, the open door. Harry looked at it. He thought about what Lucifer had said, let him think his schedule is still operative. He thought about the hat's voice, you already know. He thought about what he actually wanted from this conversation, which was information, specifically, Dumbledore's version of events, which would tell Harry as much by what it omitted as what it included. What happened the night my parents died? Harry said. Not the version for young children. The actual version. Dumbledore looked at him for a moment. You're 11, he said gently. I know how old I am, Harry said, equally gently. Something moved behind Dumbledore's eyes, a recalibration. He was reassessing. Harry could almost see it happening, the adjustment of the script. Your parents were targeted by a dark wizard, Dumbledore said. The most dangerous dark wizard in living memory. Voldemort. He said the name without flinching, which Harry noted, most people flinched. He came for you, specifically, because of a prophecy. Your mother was asked to step aside. She refused. What she did next, the protection she gave you, is ancient magic, love magic, that Voldemort's power had no answer to. The curse rebounded. He was diminished. Not destroyed, Harry said. A pause. Not entirely. Where is he now? A longer pause. We're not certain. Harry looked at him steadily. But you have suspicions. Harry, you have suspicions, and they've informed decisions you've made about things in the school this year. Harry said it pleasantly, with no accusation in the delivery, just the clean edge of someone being accurate. The third-floor corridor. You've told everyone it's off limits, which is a reliable way to ensure every student is curious about it. Which means either it's a test of some kind, or you've put something there and you want the attention on the corridor rather than somewhere else. Dumbledore was very still. Harry watched the shift happen behind those blue eyes, the inventory turning from capable, confident first year towards something it didn't have a label for yet. You are, Dumbledore said slowly, remarkably perceptive for someone your age. I pay attention, Harry said. Another question. The night my parents died, was there anyone else in the house? Between my parents and Voldemort? James died first, Dumbledore said. He held the door, yes, Harry said. But my mother, when she stood between Voldemort and me, was there anyone else present, in any sense? Any other party? The question was delicate. He wasn't asking about Lily's magic. He was asking, in the most oblique way he could manage while staying honest, whether Dumbledore knew about the deal, whether Lily's protection had been something purely human or whether she'd had access to something else, something with a very specific origin. Whether Dumbledore knew what the protection was actually made of. Dumbledore held his gaze. The protective magic your mother used, Dumbledore said carefully, was self-sacrifice. The most powerful magical force that exists. She gave her life willingly, and the magic that came from that choice is extraordinary. Unprecedented in certain respects. He paused. In certain, qualitative respects. He knew. Harry saw it, the choice to not say it, the careful stepping around the center of what Harry had asked, the word unprecedented carrying all the weight of what wasn't being said. He knew what Lily Evans had been, who she'd loved, what her son carried. He had always known. Harry sat with this for 3 seconds. "Thank you," Harry said, standing. "This has been really helpful." Dumbledore looked up at him. "Harry, I should get back," Harry said. "We have an essay on the switching spell due Thursday, and I've only done the first section." He smiled at the headmaster with all the warmth of someone who means exactly what they're showing and nothing that they're not. "Can I go?" A pause. "Of course." Harry went. He made it to the corridor before he stopped, and put his back against the stone wall and breathed once, twice, 3 times. Not from shock. From the particular fullness of a lot of information landing simultaneously. Dumbledore had known from the beginning. Not just that Harry was different, but what he was different from. He had taken a child who was half something ancient and enormous and deliberately kept that child small and ignorant and manageable, with full knowledge of what was being suppressed. The cold thing in Harry's chest was back. He'd felt it at Privet Drive. It was back now and it had weight. He pushed off the wall and walked back toward Gryffindor Tower. He wrote to Lucifer that night. Not a letter, there was no owl, but a method Lucifer had shown him, which involved a piece of parchment, a specific intent, and a silver ink that cost more than most things at Flourish and Blots, and that wrote itself once given the first word. "He knows," Harry wrote. "Everything. He's known since before I was born. He's choosing not to say it, which means he's choosing to keep me uninformed, which means the entire premise of his involvement with me is built on that choice." The reply came back in minutes, in Lucifer's sharp, fast handwriting. "Yes. I know. I've known he knew. I wanted you to confirm it yourself rather than operate on my information alone. How are you?" Harry looked at that last question. Thought about it honestly. "Ready," he wrote. A shorter pause. Then, "Good. Something is going to happen soon. I've had word from the Lords. Dumbledore has made a secondary move, something beyond just keeping you here. I don't have the detail yet. Be aware." Harry folded the parchment. Put it away. Looked at the window of the boys' dormitory, the dark sky beyond it, a particular bright star visible just above the tree-ling. He thought about Quirrell. About the pressure at his scar. About the third-floor corridor, and whatever Dumbledore was protecting in it, and the hat's information about the 7th floor, and the double game being played in this castle between a dark wizard who thought he was hunting prey and an old man who thought he was controlling a prophecy, and in the middle of both of them, not hiding, not afraid, not a piece on anyone's board, him. The scar pulsed once. Gentle. Exploratory. He pressed 2 fingers to his forehead again. He let the light come, not dramatically, not in a way anyone else would see, but the edge of it, the excess of it that sat just under his skin, the thing that wasn't quite wizard magic and wasn't quite anything else, the thing that Lucifer had said was expression rather than malfunction. He let it warm, just slightly. Just enough. On the other end of whatever connection the scar represented, he felt something recoil. He almost smiled. The next morning was Saturday, and Harry went down to the lake before breakfast. The grounds were quiet, heavy with dew, the castle throwing its long morning shadow across the water. He sat on a rock near the edge and looked at the surface and thought. Maze found him there at 7:30. He didn't hear her coming because Maze did not make sounds she didn't intend to make, but he felt the specific quality of the air change, something old and demon-shaped settling into the space nearby, and he looked up and she was sitting on the rock beside him, jacket over her knees, looking at the lake. "How did you get in?" he asked. "I told you," she said. "Wards don't work on you," Harry finished. "Right." He looked at the lake. "How long have you been here?" "Since yesterday," she said. "I was watching the castle." "Watching for what?" "Watching for the thing that's in it that shouldn't be." She picked up a stone and turned it in her fingers. "There's something in this castle, Harry. Something old and wrong, and it's been here longer than the school year." "The 7th floor," Harry said. She looked at him. "How do you know about that?" "The hat told me." She was quiet for a moment, The Sorting Hat. It's a genuine intelligence, Harry said. It has a comprehensive library of magical signatures. It knew what I was the moment it touched me. What did it say? It said there's something Voldemort adjacent on the 7th floor. And that I should know about it. He paused. I think it's actually Voldemort. Or what's left of him. And I think Dumbledore knows, and I think it might be deliberate. Maze turned the stone in her fingers again. Then she threw it, and it skipped twice and sank. Why would Dumbledore want a piece of Voldemort in his school? I don't know yet, Harry said. But Dumbledore makes choices that look like protection from outside and look like setup from inside. Maybe he thinks having Voldemort accessible in a controlled environment is better than having him loose. A pause. Or maybe he wants Voldemort to find me here. On his terms. Maze said nothing for a moment. Then she turned and looked at him with the flat, assessing eyes. Are you afraid? No, Harry said. Good, she said, and she meant it without sentiment, the pure evaluation of someone who needs accurate information about a person's state and got it. Are you? Harry asked. She looked at him with the expression of someone being offered a concept they don't quite speak. No, she said. I'm annoyed. It's different. He almost smiled. What are you going to do about the 7th floor thing? Watch it, she said. And when it moves, she left that open. The open space where the end of the sentence would be had the specific quality of something sharp and ready. Don't do anything until I know, Harry said. She looked at him. I mean it, he said. Don't move on it without telling me first. She held his gaze. Then she said, in the measured tone of someone making a concession that costs them something. When it moves, I'll tell you first. Thank you, he said. She stood, brushed stone dust off her jacket, and looked at the castle. Dumbledore is going to try something bigger, she said. Whatever he's doing with the corridor, whatever the setup is, he's going to try to involve you in a way that he controls. She glanced down at Harry. He's going to try to make you feel like you're making a choice when you're actually following the path he's built. I know, Harry said. And when he does? Harry looked at the water. Bright morning on the surface. Deep below that, impenetrable and old. I'll follow the path, he said. But not to his destination. Maze was quiet for a moment. Then, without looking at him. You sound like him. Your father. Is that good? Harry asked. She picked up another stone, turned it once, put it in her pocket. It's very good, she said, and walked back toward the castle, and the dew-heavy grass settled behind her like she'd never been there. Harry sat by the lake until the sun finished rising and the castle threw its shadow somewhere else entirely, and he thought about everything, Voldemort and Dumbledore and the Lords of Hell watching from below and Lucifer's warning that something was coming, and what he felt, sitting with all of it, was not the weight he'd expected. What he felt was ready. He stood up, brushed off his robes, walked back toward the castle for breakfast. Behind him the lake surface caught the light and held it, bright and total. Chapter 4. The Scar Looks Back. October arrived and brought rain and the specific particular madness of Hogwarts in full academic swing, essays stacking up, Quidditch tryouts announced, the great hall permanently smelling of whatever the kitchens were doing with root vegetables, and a general escalation of noise that Harry had decided he liked. The castle was alive in October in a way it hadn't quite been in September, like it had been warming up. He had found his rhythm. Mornings, classes, which he treated with genuine interest rather than performance. Not because he needed to impress anyone but because magic was, at its root, fascinating, the logic of it, the way intent and motion and material combined into something that shouldn't work and did. Hermione sat beside him in most classes and they had developed a working dynamic that suited them both. She provided context, he provided instinct, and between them they produced results that made Flitwick visibly emotional on at least 2 separate occasions. Afternoons, the grounds, or the library, or both. He'd found a section of the library that Hermione hadn't yet fully catalogued, which was impressive, given Hermione's cataloging speed, a corner of magical theory that got into the nature of inherited power in ways the standard texts didn't, and he spent a lot of afternoons there. Evenings, the common room, where Ron had established himself as someone Harry genuinely liked. Not because Ron was brilliant in the way Hermione was brilliant, but because Ron was honest in the particular way of someone who says what he thinks without managing it first, and Harry found that rare enough to value highly. Maze checked in twice a week at the lake. She told him the seventh-floor thing was stable. Dormant, she said, in the way of something dormant rather than gone. She had the look, on these occasions, of someone exercising patience that has a specific limit. The Quidditch tryout was a Wednesday. Harry had not planned to try out. He'd been watching the pitch from the stands when the Gryffindor team ran drills. Angelina Johnson and Katie Bell and Alicia Spinett moving in formation above the pitch with the efficiency of people who had been doing this for years, and he'd been sitting there with his Advanced Theory of Elemental Motion textbook open, which was not a standard text but Lucifer had added it to the pile. And he was reading it less than he was watching the dryers because the way they banked in the wind was interesting from a physics standpoint. Oliver Wood had found him there. Captain, 5th year, the evangelical light of Quidditch devotion in his eyes. "Have you ever flown?" Wood demanded. "First broom lesson was last month," Harry said. "And?" Harry thought about the first broom lesson. He'd gotten on the broom and thought about the intent of it, and the broom had come off the ground smoothly and stayed where he put it with a precision that had made Madame Hooch stop mid-instruction and look at him. "Fine," he said. "Fine," Wood repeated, in the tone of someone whose concept of fine and Harry's concept of fine had not yet been reconciled. "I watched you in that lesson. That broom doesn't move like that for first years." "I understand the principle of what the broom is trying to do," Harry said. "Once you understand the principle, the execution follows." Wood stared at him. "Can you catch things?" "I expect so." "Come and try." Harry tried. He got on a Nimbus 2000 and went up 200 feet and Wood threw something at the speed of someone who was genuinely trying to make it difficult to catch, and Harry tracked it, the small golden glint of the practice snitch spinning in a wide arc, and thought about the principle of convergence, and where the snitch would be rather than where it was, and went there, and closed his hand around it. Wood made a sound that had no coherent shape. "I'm putting you on the team," he said from below. "I'm a first year," Harry said, landing. "Exceptions are made," Wood said. "I'm making one right now." "Okay," Harry said. He wrote to Lucifer that night, "I appear to be on the Quidditch team." The reply came back, "Of course you are. Try not to be insufferably good at everything simultaneously." And then, after a short gap, actually, be insufferably good at everything simultaneously. Don't let anyone tell you not to be. Harry smiled at the parchment, and put it away. It was the 3rd week of October when Hermione worked it out. He'd been expecting it, she'd said she would research it, and she was Hermione, which meant when she said she would do something the only variable was when, not whether. He came down to the common room on a Sunday morning and found her already there, which was normal, but with a different quality of stillness than usual. Not the active stillness of someone reading but the particular stillness of someone who has just arrived at a conclusion and is sitting with its weight. She had 6 books open around her. One of them was not a school text. He sat across from her. She looked up. "I'm not going to pretend I haven't been researching it," she said. "I know you haven't been pretending," Harry said. "And I'm not going to pretend I haven't reached a conclusion. I know that too." She held his gaze. The fire was low, early morning, not many people up yet. Ron was still asleep, which Ron would be until someone made noise or produced food. "You should know," she said carefully, "that I went into this trying to find a rational, empirical explanation. A magical inheritance that presents in unusual ways. A specific bloodline with unusual properties. Something within the established framework. And the established framework doesn't quite cover it." She looked down at the books and back up. "There's a category, in pre-Hogwarts magical taxonomy, Before things got organized and codified, there's a category called Nephilim. Half human, half divine. Or half human, half celestial, if you want to avoid the theological baggage. The baggage comes with the category, Harry said. She nodded, accepting this. The magical signature for a Nephilim is described as human magical expression with a celestial undertone. Light adjacent, they said. The older text said things like difficult to contain and presents as excess rather than deficit. Meaning the magic doesn't feel limited, it feels like there's more than the current expression. Harry said. Yes. Exactly. She looked at him steadily. The being that the celestial half comes from matters. There are different types described. But the most significant classification, the one the oldest texts treat as completely categorical, is the Morningstar line. She paused. That's what they called it. The Morningstar line. Meaning, direct descent from yes, Harry said. The words sat in the low-fire quiet of the Gryffindor common room. Hermione looked at him. Her expression was something Harry had learned to read specifically, the expression she wore when she had encountered information that was extraordinary and was deliberately not reacting to it in proportion because the situation called for being steady rather than spectacular. You're the son of Lucifer, she said. Quietly and precisely, in the tone of someone stating a verified fact. Yes, Harry said. The actual Lucifer. The yes? The actual Lucifer, Harry confirmed. She breathed in once. Out once. And you've known since my birthday. He sent me a letter. He sent you a... She stopped herself. Right. Okay. She looked at the books, looked back at him. And Dumbledore? Knows, Harry said. Has known since before I was born. Has been actively managing what I know about myself since he left me at the Dursleys. Something changed in Hermione's expression. It wasn't explosive, she wasn't that kind of person, but it was definite. The empirical mind encountering a moral fact and recategorizing accordingly. He suppressed information about your own parentage. Yes. And the enchantments he placed to prevent your father from contacting you expired at 11, Harry said. They had a shelf life. He thought the Hogwarts letter would be the first thing I received. My father's letter arrived 40 minutes before it. Hermione looked at him for a long moment. He watched her process it, not just the fact of what he was, but the full political geometry of the situation, the way she processed things, linearly and completely. You're not frightened, she said. No. Of any of it. Not Dumbledore, not Voldemort, not any of it. No, Harry said. Should I be? She considered this with genuine seriousness. Most people would be, she said. Most people in your position would be terrified. I know what I am, Harry said. And I know who's behind me. Those two things together, there's not much room left for frightened. Hermione sat with this for a moment. Then she did something unexpected. She reached over and closed all 6 books, one by one, in a deliberate and slightly ceremonial way that seemed to represent a decision. Right, she said. Then what are we doing about it? Harry looked at her. We? Yes, we. Her chin lifted slightly. I have just confirmed that my friend is the son of the literal devil, that the headmaster of our school has been systematically deceiving both of you, and that there is something Voldemort adjacent in this castle. I am not going to sit here and read books about it. A pause. Well, I am going to read books about it, obviously. But I'm not going to only do that. Harry looked at her for a long moment. Ron's going to be very excited, he said. Ron, Hermione said, with the careful neutrality she deployed when discussing Ron's general approach to things, is going to say wicked and then ask if it means you can do something impressive. He's not wrong, Harry said. She made a sound that was trying very hard not to be a laugh and was losing. Ron said wicked. Then he said, does this mean you can actually do something impressive? And then, when Harry described the light at the edges thing, Ron said, can you make it happen right now? And Harry did, just slightly, Just the warmth of it at his fingertips, and Ron stared at it with his mouth open for a full 4 seconds. Mate, Ron said with the reverent weight of someone who has encountered the correct word and is using it properly. That is wicked. You already said that, Hermione said. I meant it more the second time, Ron said. Harry let the light go. It faded from his fingertips like a thought leaving. There's more than that, he said, but I don't know the full extent of it yet. It develops with practice and pressure. What kind of pressure? Ron asked. The kind this year seems to be building toward, Harry said. They were in the corner of the common room after dinner, low voices, the fire doing the thing it did in October, burning with actual intent rather than the decorative quality of September. Most of the other Gryffindors were doing homework, or arguing about Quidditch. The thing on the 7th floor, Hermione said. What exactly is it? I don't know specifically, Harry said. Maze says it's dormant. Something Voldemort adjacent, the hat said. My best guess, given everything, a fragment. A piece of him that survived. That's not supposed to be possible, Hermione said with the expression of someone whose understanding of what is supposed to be possible has been undergoing significant revision recently. Lots of things aren't supposed to be possible, Harry said. And then they are anyway. And Dumbledore put it there, Ron said slowly. Or knows it's there. He knows it's there, Harry said. He's either protecting it or using it. Or both. Using it how? Ron said. Harry thought about Dumbledore's certainty. About a man who moves pieces on a board and believes the pieces are safer for being moved. He thinks Voldemort will come for me, Harry said. He probably thinks that's inevitable. And if it's inevitable, then having some version of Voldemort accessible, here, where Dumbledore controls the environment, is better than waiting for him to find his own way. He wants to control the reunion. He wants to manage the prophecy, Hermione said quietly. He wants to manage everything, Harry said. The question is what we do when he makes his move. Ron leaned forward. What move? He's going to try to put me in the path of the 7th floor thing, Harry said. He's going to build a situation where I stumble into it, probably thinking I'm being heroic, probably having been pointed that way by a series of conveniently arranged circumstances, and have a confrontation, and survive it, and he'll be there to draw the right lessons from the survival and place them in the framework he wants. The fire cracked. Somewhere upstairs someone dropped something heavy. That is, Hermione said in a voice that had gone very precise. Extraordinarily manipulative. Yes, Harry agreed. So what do we do? Ron said. We let him build the circumstances, Harry said. But we stay ahead of where he thinks we are. We go to the 7th floor before he pushes us there. We do it on our terms, not his. Just the 3 of us? Ron said, with the expression of someone who is asking this from excitement rather than concern. Maze will be there, Harry said. And my father will know. Right. Ron sat back. Right. Yeah. That's okay. He nodded with the conviction of someone who has made a decision at speed and finds the speed agreeable. When? When Dumbledore's hand is visible, Harry said. Not before. I want to see what he's actually arranged before I step into it. How will we know? Hermione asked. Harry looked at the fire. Because he'll arrange something that looks like an accident, he said. And it'll be too tidy to be one. It happened on the night of the first Quidditch match. Gryffindor versus Slytherin, which generated the specific energy of 2 houses that had been disagreeing about fundamental values for 900 years being asked to resolve it through a sporting event. The stands were full. The weather was grey-cold with a wind that was trying to make itself part of the story. Harry flew. He flew the way he did everything, with the understanding of what the broom was trying to do, what the air was doing, what the snitches' behavior patterns were establishing in the first minutes of the match. It was, he'd realized, not that different from paying attention in Dumbledore's office, the same principle of looking at what a thing was actually doing rather than what it was presenting itself as doing. The Slytherin Seeker was a boy named Higgs who was fast and experienced and technically very good, and Harry spent the first 12 minutes of the match tracking him as much as the snitch because Higgs's eyes were a better indicator of snitch location than his own searching. Higgs kept not looking at a spot above the goalposts, the careful non-attention of someone trying not to give something away. Harry went there. So did Higgs, a second later, and they went into a dive at approximately the same moment, and the wind came up from the left in a gust that should have been disruptive, and Harry shifted his weight into it rather than against it, the principle of working with a force rather than against it, and came out of the adjustment 2 feet ahead of Higgs and 6 inches from the snitch. He caught it. The match was over in 19 minutes. The roar from the Gryffindor stands was physical. Harry landed with the snitch in his hand and Wood was there immediately, doing something enthusiastic that might have been an attempt at a hug but had the structural quality of a collision. He found Ron and Hermione in the stands afterward, pushing through the celebrating crowd. Ron was making a noise that wasn't quite words. Hermione looked like someone who had decided sports were fine, actually. 19 minutes, Ron said. 19 minutes, Harry. The Seeker gave it away, Harry said. You watched his eyes, Hermione said, threading through toward him. I could see it from up here. You spent the first 10 minutes watching where he wasn't looking. Right, Harry said. She paused. That's not a standard seeking technique. No, Harry said. But it works. She looked at him with the expression she wore when she'd added something to a mental catalog, and then looked past him, and her expression changed. Harry, she said quietly. He turned. Quirrell was on the far side of the pitch, standing at the edge of the crowd, not watching the celebrations. He was looking up. At the castle. At a specific part of the castle, the upper levels. And on his face was an expression that Harry recognized not because he'd seen it before but because the hat had given him the vocabulary for it. This was the expression of something that was monitoring something else. A caretaker expression. Focused, attentive, proprietary. Harry followed Quirrell's line of sight up to the 7th floor windows. He's checking on it, Harry said quietly. Right now, Ron said. He's been checking on it all match, Harry said. He looked at Quirrell for another moment. The nervous manner, the turban, the flinching quality, and underneath all of it, the thing the hat had said, closer than anyone in this hall knows. Not hiding in the castle as a separate entity. In the castle as a person who was also something else. Or someone else was in him, which was. He's not just connected to it, Harry said slowly. It's on him. In him. Hermione's sharp intake of breath. Voldemort, she said. What's left of him? Harry said. Ron had gone very still, which for Ron was a significant physical effort. He's been teaching us, he said. All term. Yes, Harry said. He's been teaching you defense against the dark arts, Ron said with the tone of someone finding the irony extremely unpleasant. Dumbledore knows, Harry said. He has to know. He knows everything else. He watched Quirrell turn away from the castle and begin moving back inside, unhurried, unremarkable to anyone who hadn't been watching him specifically. He's keeping Voldemort here. In a teacher. In his school. Why? Ron said. Harry thought about it. The controlled environment. The managed prophecy. The chess game. Because whatever Voldemort wants is in the castle, Harry said. And Dumbledore wants to control what Voldemort does when he goes for it. He wants to be there. He wants the sequence to happen on his schedule. He paused. And he wants me involved in that sequence. The 3rd floor corridor, Hermione said. Whatever's in the 3rd floor corridor, Harry said, is what Voldemort is here for. And the 7th floor thing, the hat said 7th floor. Which means there are 2 points of interest. One that Dumbledore is advertising, 3rd floor, stay out, and one that nobody's mentioning. He looked at his friends. Dumbledore points people at the 3rd floor. Voldemort goes for the actual thing. And somewhere in the middle, he puts you, Hermione said. flat and cold and furious, in the specific way Hermione got furious, which was precise and quiet and significantly more dangerous than loud. "He puts me," Harry confirmed. They stood in the emptying pitch in the cold October air and looked at each other. "We need to know what's in the third-floor corridor," Ron said. "We need to know what's on the 7th floor," Hermione said. "Both," Harry said. "And we need to know before Dumbledore decides we're ready to find out." He wrote to Lucifer that night. Not about the game, he mentioned it in passing, one sentence, but about Quirrell and Voldemort and the double-layered architecture of what Dumbledore had built in the castle. Lucifer's reply came back quickly, and it was different from the usual, shorter, more direct, with the quality of someone who has moved from monitoring a situation to actively engaging with it. "I've had confirmation from 2 of the lords that there's been an attempt. Someone ran a diagnostic on my bloodline connection to you, a deep magical probe, the kind that would map the nature of our bond and potentially identify leverage points. It wasn't Voldemort. He doesn't have the sophistication for that kind of work right now. It was done by someone with access to very old magic and very specific intent. It was done 3 days ago. In the castle." Harry stared at the parchment. Dumbledore hadn't just been keeping information from him. He'd been actively probing the connection between Harry and Lucifer. Looking for what? Weaknesses? A way to sever it? A way to use it? He wrote back, "What does a probe like that tell the person who ran it?" The reply, the nature of the bond. How strong it is. Whether it can be interfered with. And the home address, as it were. The direction of the connection. Meaning the probe points straight back to me. Harry sat with this. "He knows about you," Harry wrote. "Not just suspects. Knows. He's been to the Lords of Hell level of knowing." "Yes," Lucifer wrote back. "And he's going to do something about it. Soon. Harry, be ready for something institutional. He's going to use his authority, not just his influence. Be ready for an action that looks protective and is actually containment." Harry put the parchment away and lay on his back in the dark of the dormitory and thought. Containment. What did containment look like at Hogwarts, from Dumbledore's position? It looked like rules applied selectively. Like access restricted. Like someone being managed rather than taught. It looked like the Dursleys, just with better lighting. He closed his eyes. The scar pulsed once, Quirrell somewhere in the castle, Voldemort's attention wandering his way, and Harry sent the light warmth back down the connection and felt the recoil, and then there was quiet. He was not afraid. He was not hiding. He was not small. He was in position. 3 days later, Professor McGonagall asked to see him after Transfiguration. Her office was neat and precise, like McGonagall herself. She stood behind her desk in the way she stood everywhere, as if she had decided to be there, and was committed to the decision. "Sit down, Mr. Potter." He sat. She looked at him for a moment with the expression she'd been wearing with increasing frequency around him, the expression of someone reassessing a previous assessment. "I want to speak plainly with you," she said. "I'd appreciate that," Harry said. "You are an extraordinary student. Your work this term is, the word that keeps occurring to me is effortless, which I don't mean as a criticism. I mean that you seem to operate from a place of genuine understanding rather than technical execution, and that is rare. Exceptionally rare." She paused. "I also want you to know that I am your head of house. If you come to me with anything, concerns, questions, anything, I take that seriously." "Thank you," Harry said, and he meant it. McGonagall was the most straightforward person on the faculty by some distance. "There is something I want to ask you," she said. "And you are under no obligation to answer." "Ask," Harry said. Is there something I should know?" "Something about your circumstances that might be relevant to your safety this year?" He looked at her. At the direct line of her gaze, the precision of her question, the way she'd phrased it to give him the maximum control over the answer. She didn't know. He was sure of it. She knew something was off. McGonagall was not a woman who missed things, but she didn't know the specifics, And she was asking because her instincts were telling her to, and she trusted her instincts. Professor, he said carefully, if I were in a situation where the person I normally report a concern to was also the source of the concern, what would the appropriate channel be? McGonagall looked at him steadily. He watched her process this, watched her take the specific shape of that question and work out what had to be true for it to be asked. Her jaw tightened slightly and then released. Then you'd bring it to a governor, she said, or to the ministry. And if the ministry had a relationship with the same source of concern? Another small tightening. Then you'd find an independent legal representative, she said. Someone outside the system of the concern. Useful to know, Harry said. She looked at him for a long moment. You are not in danger from this school, she said, and he heard it as the thing it was, a promise. Not Hogwarts is completely safe, because she was too honest for that. But not from this school, meaning not from what Hogwarts actually was, distinct from whatever was happening inside it. I know, he said. She nodded once, with the finality of something settled between them, and he stood to go. Mr. Potter, she said, as he reached the door. He looked back. The first Quidditch match, she said. 19 minutes. The Seeker was giving it away, Harry said. McGonagall looked at him with something that on a less controlled face would have been delight. Indeed, she said. Good afternoon. He went out into the corridor and walked back toward the common room, and as he walked he felt something settle, not a plan exactly, more the feeling of a plan becoming possible. McGonagall didn't know everything, but she knew enough to have just pointed him somewhere. Independent legal representative. Someone outside the system. He was thinking about this when he turned the corner toward the 7th floor staircase, not going there, just passing through, and stopped. Maze was in the corridor. She was standing very still, which was unusual for Maze, and she was looking at the wall at the end of the passage with the focused attention she'd had by the lake when she talked about the 7th floor thing. Harry came to stand beside her. What is it? It moved, she said. He felt it then, not through sight or sound but through something else, something that lived below his wizard magic and was considerably older. A pressure. A wrongness. The specific quality of something that shouldn't exist pressing against the fabric of what should. When? Harry said. 20 minutes ago. It's not fully mobile, more like it shifted. Like it's starting to consolidate. It's getting stronger, Harry said. Something's feeding it, Maze said. Something in the school. Something that's making it stronger faster than it should be getting on its own. Quirrell, Harry said. Or Voldemort through Quirrell. He's not just here by accident, he's been feeding the fragment. Building it. Maze turned her head and looked at Harry. In the corridor's light her eyes were very dark and very old and completely without fear. She was looking at him the way she had by the lake, with the pure evaluative quality of someone assessing a situation for what it actually needed. Your father should know, she said. I'll write tonight, Harry said. But Maze, it's not time yet. I know, she said. But it's getting close to time. I know, he said. When it is time, I want to be there. Not after. During. She held his gaze. Then she said, You'll be there. They stood in the corridor and the castle was quiet around them and far below, in the part of the castle where the students were moving between dinner and their common rooms and normal things. Nobody knew that on the 7th floor a fragment of the darkest wizard of the century was quietly and steadily growing stronger, being fed by the ghost wearing a professor's face. And 2 floors above it the Devil's Son and one of Hell's generals were standing in a corridor making plans. And in the headmaster's office, a very old and very certain man was moving his pieces, absolutely sure of the board. Not checking anymore what was moving behind him. Chapter 5. When the ground shakes. November came down hard on Hogwarts. The kind of November that has opinions, all of them cold. The lake went gray and stayed gray. The grounds turned to mud in strategic places that Filch monitored with the vigilance of a man who has decided that muddy footprints are the central moral issue of the age. The fires in the common rooms burned higher, and the castle seemed to pull its stones in slightly, settling deeper into the hill. Harry trained. Not just Quidditch, though it had him on the pitch 3 mornings a week in weather that made the concept of morning feel aggressive. Not just classwork, though he kept that sharp because he found he genuinely wanted to understand things rather than just pass them. He trained in the way Maze had shown him, through situations, through problems without established solutions, through the specific pressure of being in moments that required him to find the answer in himself rather than retrieve it from somewhere external. Maze had taken to appearing in unexpected places. He'd find her in the corridor outside Charms, leaning against the wall looking dangerous while Flitwick's class finished. She was at the edge of the Quidditch pitch one morning in horizontal sleet, watching without comment, while Wood screamed tactical adjustments into the wind. She sat at the edge of the Forbidden Forest twice, and Harry had gone out to meet her both times and they'd walked the border without going in, and she told him things about the nature of the creatures in it, not textbook things but real things, experiential things, the things you know about beings when you're older than them. "The centaurs will have noticed you," she said on the second walk. "They read the stars. They'll have seen the Morningstar signature in your trajectory. Will they be hostile? Centaurs are hostile to everyone. It's a baseline. But hostile to you specifically." She considered this. "No. If anything, curious. They read prophecy and they'll have questions about how you fit into their current interpretation of events. Do they get along with demons?" Maze made a sound. "Nobody gets along with demons. We get respected or we get avoided. Those are the options. Which do the centaurs choose?" "Respected," she said, with the flat satisfaction of fact. "He was in the library the 3rd week of November when the Quibbler moved. He didn't call it that. That was Ron's term, coined immediately and without any indication that he considered it insufficient. The Quibbler was what they called the 7th floor thing because giving it Voldemort's name in casual conversation felt both excessive and incautious, and Ron had said, "We should call it something," and then called it the Quibbler before anyone could suggest anything else, and it had stuck. The Quibbler moved on a Tuesday night. Harry felt it at dinner, the pressure shift, like the castle took a breath. He pressed his fingers to the table to check the feeling was real, and it was something resonant coming up through the stone from several floors above, the psychic equivalent of bass through a wall. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just present in a way it hadn't been yesterday. He looked at Hermione across the table. She had looked up from her book. She brought books to dinner, a habit that McGonagall had stopped trying to address, and was looking at him with the specific attention of someone who has been waiting for a particular thing to happen and recognizes it arriving. "Tonight?" she said quietly. "Not tonight," he said. "But soon." Ron had been listening without appearing to. "How soon is soon?" "Days," Harry said. "Maybe less." They ate the rest of dinner in the particular silence of people who have something significant scheduled. After dinner he went to the Oli and wrote to Lucifer. The Oli was cold and smelled exactly like you would expect a room full of owls to smell, and Harry sat on the ledge with the wind coming in through the gaps and wrote by the light of a lantern, and the wind tried to take the parchment twice, and he held it without looking up. Something is happening. The fragment is becoming mobile. I think Quirrell is accelerating its consolidation, maybe because Voldemort can sense me in the building and is pushing faster than he planned. The 3rd floor corridor thing and the 7th floor thing are both in play. I don't know which Dumbledore will use to push me into position, but it's going to happen soon. I need you to know something. Whatever happens, I'm not going to be managed by it. I'm going to walk into this with my eyes open, on my terms, and I need you to let me do that. I know you could. I know you could come here and end this in probably 3 minutes, and I know that's what you want to do. But this is mine. The resolution of this is mine. Does that make sense?" He looked at what he'd written. Then added, "I'm not asking for permission. I'm asking you to trust me." He sent it. He waited. The reply came back in 11 minutes, which for cross-realm correspondence was approximately instantaneous, and told him that Lucifer had been waiting for something from him. "I know. I've been watching the signature on the 7th floor since Maze told me it shifted. My first instinct was to come there immediately and have a conversation with Dumbledore that would rearrange several things about his life. My second instinct was to trust you. I'm going with the second instinct. But Harry, listen to me. There is a specific situation in which my patience ends, and it is this: if Dumbledore attempts to use you as a vessel. If he tries to put you in a position where your power feeds something he's built rather than something you've chosen. The moment that happens, the patience ends. Do you understand? Harry understood. He wrote, understood. I'll know if that's what he's doing. The last reply, I know you will. You're your mother's son as much as mine. She always saw the mechanism behind the gesture. So do you. One more thing. The Lords are watching. They've been watching since August. 3 of them are positioned on the edges of the wards already, not breaking through, not acting. Waiting. Hell doesn't mobilize slowly, Harry. When we move all at once. Be ready for that to be loud. Harry folded the parchment. Sat in the cold ole for a moment. Loud. He thought about what loud meant, coming from hell. Then he went back inside. The situation Dumbledore built was, as Harry had predicted, too tidy to be accidental. It came together on a Friday. First, Neville, who was sweet and perpetually anxious about academic performance, received a letter from his grandmother at breakfast that put him in a state. He'd confided in Harry once that his grandmother's expectations were a specific and reliable source of pressure, and at breakfast he was pale in the way of someone receiving news that was going to require significant management, and he knocked his orange juice across the table onto his charms essay, and Ron had helped him mop it up, and the essay was partly salvaged but not entirely. Harry watched this happen. Then he watched Professor Quirrell, at the staff table, also watch it happen, with the expression that wasn't quite Quirrell's. The other expression, the one that sat behind Quirrell's nervous manner like a pilot behind a mask. Nothing in Neville's letter was relevant to anything. But Quirrell, who was also Voldemort, was watching a first year's distress with interest, and the interest was not pedagogical. Second, the 3rd floor corridor. At lunch, Hermione came to the table with the look of someone who has just found something and needs a moment to decide how to say it. I went to the 3rd floor this morning, she said, in a voice engineered for Harry's ears. Before anyone was up. I wanted to see what was actually in there. And? Harry said. It's a trapdoor, she said. Guarded by a dog. A very large 3-headed dog. Ron stopped eating. How large? It fills most of the room, Hermione said, with the precision of someone who has filed this detail correctly. And it was asleep, which, there was a harp. Someone had left a harp playing enchanted music, and the dog was asleep. The harp was almost run down. When I got there it was playing very slowly. What's under the trapdoor? Harry said. I couldn't get there. The dog took up most of the floor. But, she paused. The trapdoor was warm. Not from the dog. From something below it. Something that was radiating heat, and what I can only describe as the feeling of significance. The Philosopher's Stone, Harry said. She looked at him. Ron looked at him. I've been reading about Flamel, Harry said. Nicholas Flamel. He's the only person known to have made one. A stone that produces the elixir of life and can turn base metals to gold. If you were Voldemort and you'd survived but barely, the one thing you need above everything else is a way to restore your body. The stone does that. He looked at the staff table. And if you were Dumbledore and you wanted to keep Voldemort close and controlled, you'd put the thing he most wants in a location you control. He used it as bait, Hermione said. He used it as a board position, Harry said. Third, the push. It came at dinner. A prefect found Harry between courses, a 5th-year Harry vaguely recognized, and said, in the offhand tone of someone delivering a message rather than making a request, that Professor Quirrell wanted to speak with him about his defense essay. After dinner. His office. Harry looked at the prefect for a moment. The message was too casual. The timing was too convenient. Quirrell had barely engaged with Harry in class beyond the surface professional interactions of a teacher and student, and he certainly hadn't been the type to request private meetings. His office was on the second floor, well away from the third-floor corridor and the seventh-floor room. This was a setup. Not Quirrell's setup. Dumbledore's. Move Harry toward Quirrell. Let Voldemort's proximity to Harry cause a reaction that Dumbledore had anticipated and prepared for, and in that preparation, claimed the narrative. Tell Professor Quirrell I'll be there, Harry said. He went back to his food. Ron leaned in from the left. You're not actually going. I'm going, Harry said. Just not alone. He wrote 3 things on a small piece of parchment under the table and passed it to Ron. Ron read it and nodded. Then he passed it to Hermione. She read it and nodded. Harry ate the rest of his dinner. He went to the Oli first, quickly, and sent a single line to the parchment address, "Tonight. Be ready." He didn't wait for a reply. He went back through the castle, found the specific corridor he wanted on the 7th floor, and stopped outside it. Maze materialized from a shadow that was either a doorway or had been a doorway until she decided she'd rather it be a hiding spot. You felt it? Harry said. It's fully mobile, she said. As of about an hour ago. It's not on the 7th floor anymore, Harry. It's moving. It's in the walls. Where is it going? Quirrell, she said. It's going back to Quirrell. Because Voldemort knows I'm coming to Quirrell's office, Harry said. He summoned it home. He thought about this quickly. Which means the 7th floor is clear. And the 3rd floor is what it is. And Quirrell's office is now 3 problems stacked. What do you want to do? Maze said. I want to go to Quirrell's office, Harry said. She looked at him. Because that's where everything is converging, he said. Because that's the point of the board where all the pieces are going. And if I'm going to be part of the ending of this, I need to be at the convergence point. Dumbledore will also be at the convergence point, Maze said. I know, Harry said. That's fine. She held his gaze for 3 seconds with the evaluative quality of someone checking a reading. Ron and Hermione are going to the 3rd floor corridor, Harry said. Not to get the stone, just to understand the full layout of what Dumbledore's built. I don't want them at Quirrell's office. Smart, Maze said. You're with me. Obviously, she said. They went. Quirrell's office was on the 2nd floor, east corridor, with a door that was slightly too large for the frame in a way that suggested it had been moved here from somewhere else at some point. The torches in the corridor were lower than elsewhere, which might have been atmospheric, or might have been that something in the room was consuming light. Harry knocked. The door opened immediately, which meant Quirrell had been waiting. The office was dim. Books stacked in ways that looked deliberate, specific titles facing outward that Harry clocked in 2 seconds. Advanced Occlumency, The Dark Arts Compendium, A History of Horcruxes. That last one. He'd read enough of Lucifer's supplementary texts to know what that word meant, and knowing what it meant told him something about the 7th floor fragment that he hadn't had the final piece for until this moment. Not just a fragment. A Horcrux. A piece of soul, torn off and anchored to the world. The darkest magic there was. Quirrell was standing in the middle of the office. The nervous manner was gone. This close, with no audience to perform for, the mask had been dropped, not Quirrell's mask, the mask over the real thing, and the real thing was looking at Harry with eyes that were not Quirrell's. Harry Potter, said a voice from Quirrell's mouth that was not Quirrell's voice. Harry stood in the doorway. Maze was behind him and to the left, outside the door. He could feel her there, the old demon pressure of her, and knew she would not move unless he moved first. You're not Quirrell, Harry said pleasantly. No, the voice agreed. Though the professor has been helpful. A weak vessel, but adequate. A slight pause. You know what I am? I know exactly what you are, Harry said. He came into the room, which was a choice. He didn't stay in the doorway, didn't keep the exit immediately available. He came in and stood in the room because this was a conversation, and he intended to be present for it. What I'm curious about is what you expected to happen tonight. You had Dumbledore arrange the meeting. You knew I'd come. What was the plan? Something shifted in the eyes. The specific shift of a thing encountering a variable it hadn't fully accounted for. You know Dumbledore arranged it, the voice said. Yes, Harry said. You came anyway. Obviously, Harry said. I wanted to see what both of you were planning. A silence. The air in the office was wrong, too warm, with the specific fever warmth of something unhealthy concentrated in a space. The Horcrux had fully merged back into Quirrell's person, and the combined pressure of it was significant. Not frightening. Significant. You're not what I expected, Voldemort said through Quirrell's mouth. Nobody is, Harry said. What did you expect? A boy who didn't know what he was walking into. I knew exactly what I was walking into, Harry said. He tilted his head slightly. I want to ask you something. Genuine question. The eyes waited. Why me? Harry said. Not the prophecy. I've heard the prophecy framing. That's Dumbledore's version of it. I mean from your perspective specifically. You came for me as a baby. You've been in this castle all term, specifically. You're building strength specifically. I want to know what you think I am that makes me worth this much attention. Another shift. This one more complex, something that was almost disturbingly honest. You are the variable, Voldemort said. Every calculation I have made about power in this world has a variable I cannot resolve. The night your mother died, something happened that I have spent 10 years unable to categorize. The protection she put on you. The way the killing curse, I couldn't understand it. And I understand most things. The voice was very controlled and very certain in the way Lucifer had described certainty, patient, dangerous. I came back to this castle because the stone is here and I need it. But I stayed because you're here. And now I'm very close to you, and I still can't categorize you. Would you like to? Harry said. The eyes sharpened. The protection my mother used, Harry said. It wasn't just love magic. It had a component you couldn't categorize because it's outside your taxonomy. Your whole framework is human magic, dark human magic, mostly, but human. My mother accessed something outside that framework. Something older. He paused. The reason you can't kill me isn't just that the curse bounced off a loving sacrifice. It's that you were trying to kill something that isn't fully in your jurisdiction. A very long silence. What are you? Voldemort said. I'm Harry Potter, Harry said. And that's enough of an answer for tonight. He raised his wand. What came out of it was not standard. He'd been practicing, not in any supervised setting, not from any textbook, but from the understanding of what his wand was and what the core of it conducted and what he could put through it if he stopped thinking of himself as a wizard with limits and started thinking of himself as what he actually was. A wizard with a celestial signature running underneath. A person who was, at rest, difficult to contain. He stopped containing it. The light that came out of the wand was gold and white and had the specific quality of the light at his fingertips when he was emotional. But at full expression rather than the controlled edge of it, it filled the room, not like an explosion, like a dawn. Fast and total and warm. Purposeful. Not aimed at Quirrell's body because he had no particular interest in destroying Quirrell's body. Aimed at the thing inside it, the piece of Voldemort's soul that had made a home there, the Horcrux fragment that was the actual problem. The light hit it, and the fragment screamed. Not Quirrell. The fragment. The piece of torn soul that had been in this room all term, growing, being fed, planning, it screamed in a way that had no real sound, more of a pressure, a psychic impact that rattled the books off the shelves and put a crack in the window and blew every torch in the corridor outside simultaneously. And then Quirrell collapsed. And then Harry lowered his wand. The office was bright. His own light, still running, settling, he could feel it wanting to continue and consciously walked it back, the way you close a valve. The books were on the floor. The window had a diagonal crack from corner to corner. Quirrell was on the floor, breathing, alive. Quirrell again. The nervous manner returned in an instant, and he looked at Harry from the floor with eyes that were absolutely his own, horrified and confused and entirely Quirrell. "It's gone," Harry said to him. "Whatever was using you, it's gone." Quirrell's voice was barely sound. "I know," Harry said. "It's done." He heard footsteps in the corridor behind him. Fast, purposeful, the footsteps of someone who had been monitoring and had just seen something he hadn't planned for, hadn't scheduled, hadn't arranged, an outcome that was correct and should have satisfied him but had happened entirely outside his control, and Albus Dumbledore did not experience outcomes outside his control without a specific internal response. Harry turned around. Dumbledore stood in the doorway. Behind him, McGonagall, slightly breathless. Behind her, barely visible in the corridor, Maze, who had stepped back into a shadow and was watching with the flat eyes of someone who has been deciding for the last 5 minutes whether to act and has settled on patience. Dumbledore looked at the room. At the books on the floor. At the cracked window. At Quirrell on the floor. At Harry standing in the middle of it, wand at his side, the last traces of light still fading from the air around him like embers. The blue eyes did their inventory. Harry waited. "Harry," Dumbledore said carefully. "Are you all right?" "Fine," Harry said. "What happened here?" Harry looked at him. At the question, and what was behind it, the precise shape of a man trying to understand how much Harry knew and had done, and what the appropriate response was to finding out that his chess piece had moved itself. "Voldemort was using Professor Quirrell as a vessel," Harry said, clearly and without elaboration. "He's been here all term. The fragment I've removed, I think you know about it. I think you've known since before September." He paused. "I removed it. It's gone." Dumbledore was very still. "That's remarkable," he said, in the tone of someone buying time with words. "I should also tell you," Harry said, "that Hermione Granger and Ron Weasley are on the 3rd floor. They went to understand the layout of what you built there. They haven't taken the stone." He watched Dumbledore's expression for the specific flicker of the man recalculating. "I'd appreciate it if you sent Professor McGonagall to collect them without incident." McGonagall made a sound that was entirely controlled and said, "I'll go." She went. Harry heard her footsteps receding at pace. He and Dumbledore looked at each other. The room was quiet. Quirrell was sitting up now, leaning against the wall, looking at the floor. The light had almost completely faded. Just the torchless corridor outside, just the cracked window and the books on the floor and the two of them. "Sit down, Harry," Dumbledore said. "I'm fine standing," Harry said. Another recalibration. Dumbledore stepped into the room and the room felt different when he was fully in it. The weight of him, the accumulated age and power of a man who had spent a century being the most significant person in most spaces. Harry felt it, and stood in it, and did not step back. "You know more than I realized," Dumbledore said. "I know everything," Harry said. Not as aggression. As fact. "Everything is a large word." "I know about the stone," Harry said. "I know what it is and why Voldemort wanted it. I know about the Horcrux on the 7th floor, or what was on the 7th floor, before it migrated back to Quirrell. I know you've been running a diagnostic on my connection to my father." He looked at Dumbledore directly. "I know that you've known what I am since before I was born. And I know that the reason you placed me with the Dursleys and built enchantments around me and managed my access to information was not malice. You genuinely believed you were protecting me. I know that too." Dumbledore looked at him for a long moment. "You've been in contact with Lucifer," he said. "With my father," Harry said. Harry. And here it was, the warmth, the full force application of it, the genuine feeling underneath it that made Dumbledore so effective and so dangerous simultaneously. "Whatever he's told you about me, you have to understand that my concern for you is real. The decisions I made were yours to make," Harry said. "And now they're done, and the consequences of them are mine to live with, and I'm doing that." He took a breath. "I'm not here to argue with you. I'm not here to make accusations. I'm here because the situation you built came to its resolution tonight, and it resolved the way it resolved because I was ready for it, and I knew what I was, and you didn't control that. You didn't control any part of it." "No," Dumbledore said quietly. "I didn't. And I need you to understand something," Harry said. "The way you've been operating, the managed information, the arranged situations, the board and the pieces, that ends. Not as a negotiation. As a statement. I'm telling you how it is." Dumbledore looked at him. Really looked at him, perhaps for the first time, not looking at the chess piece, not looking at the prophecy variable, not looking at the boy who lived as an instrumental figure in a larger plan. Looking at Harry Potter, 11 years old, standing in a room with remnants of light still in the air around him, completely still and completely serious. "You're his son," Dumbledore said. And it was different from before, not the strategic acknowledgement but something more personal, something that was encountering a truth he'd been managing for over a decade and feeling its actual weight for the first time. "Yes," Harry said. "And Hell is aware of." The castle shook. Not dramatically. Not a catastrophic shudder. More like the shiver of a very large thing settling, a deep, resonant vibration that came up through the stone floor and moved through the walls and was felt rather than heard, the way very low sound is felt rather than heard. The windows of the office rattled. The crack in the one already broken deepened. Dumbledore's head came up sharply. Harry knew what it was. He'd written tonight, "Be ready," and Lucifer had said, "When we move all at once," and the vibration in the stone was not an earthquake. It was the weight of something very old making itself present at the boundary of the school's wards. Not breaking through. Not invading. Knocking. The specific, unmistakable knock of Hell's upper hierarchy pressing against the edge of what Dumbledore had built, and making it absolutely clear that they were there. "That," Harry said, looking at Dumbledore, "is my father." Dumbledore looked at him. "He's not here to destroy anything," Harry said. "He's here because you ran a diagnostic probe on our bond 2 weeks ago, and he received the psychic address of it, and he has been very patient since then. He's here to make a point." He paused. "The point is that the enchantments you placed on me, the attempt to probe our connection, the 10 years of managed distance, he knows all of it. The Lords of Hell know all of it. And they are at the edge of your wards right now because they want you to know that they know." The castle vibrated again. A portrait fell off the wall in the corridor outside with a thump and an outraged shout from whoever was in it. "He could come through the wards," Harry said. "He's choosing not to. Because I asked him not to." He held Dumbledore's gaze steadily. "Think about what that means. I asked him not to come in. He listened. He's staying outside. He's trusting me to handle this. Harry, he's also not going to stay outside forever," Harry said. "So I suggest we have a real conversation. About what actually happened here tonight, and what comes next, and what the terms of my time at this school are going to look like from now on." Dumbledore looked at him for a long moment. The warmth was still there, but it was doing something different now, not the applied warmth of a man using an asset, but the more complicated warmth of a man encountering something he hadn't accounted for, and adjusting his understanding of it. Slowly. Honestly. He sat down. In Quirrell's chair, which was the closest one. He sat down in it like a man setting down something heavy. "All right," he said. "Talk to me." Harry sat across from him. Not close. In a chair that gave him the full room. "You believe in the prophecy," Harry said. "Yes. You believe I have a specific role to play in Voldemort's end." "I do. And you believe that role requires a specific kind of person, someone who has been shaped by difficulty, isolated by circumstance, who comes into the magical world with just enough hunger to be useful and just enough damage to be manageable." Harry said it without heat. "That was the design." Dumbledore was quiet. "The problem," Harry said, "is that the design assumed Voldemort is the only variable. It assumed that if you controlled me and controlled the circumstances and controlled the information, you could control the ending. He paused. But Voldemort isn't the only variable. I am. And I am considerably less controllable than you planned. So I see, Dumbledore said. Voldemort is not done, Harry said. What was in this room tonight was a fragment, a Horcrux. I destroyed it, but he made others. He'll find another vessel. He'll come back in a more complete form eventually. That's the actual problem we're solving, not the stone, not whatever's on the third floor. He looked at Dumbledore. So here's what I'm proposing. You tell me everything. Not the managed version. Not the version designed to shape me toward the outcome you've chosen. Everything. And I'll make my own decisions about what to do with it. Dumbledore looked at him. In exchange, Harry said, I'm going to keep coming to this school. I'm going to keep learning. I'm going to keep being the student I've been, which is, as your professors keep noting, exceptional. He allowed himself the word without modesty because modesty would have been dishonest. And when the time comes to end this properly, when Voldemort is real enough to face, I'll be ready for it. And if I don't agree to these terms? Dumbledore said. Then my father comes through the wards, Harry said simply. And we have a much louder conversation. The castle vibrated a third time. Somewhere distantly, an owl started making noise in the Oley. The crack in the window completed itself, and the lower half of the glass sagged gently outward. Dumbledore looked at the window. Then at Harry. Then at the window again. Your mother, he said slowly, used to argue with me in a very similar fashion. I know, Harry said. She sat down with the devil because she thought he needed someone who wouldn't believe what he said about himself. She was right. She was very good at finding the correct angle. He paused. I get it from her. Something moved across Dumbledore's face. Something old and private, and for the first time in all of Harry's interactions with him, completely unmanaged. She was extraordinary, Dumbledore said, and the warmth in it was real in a different way, not applied, just present, the way warmth is present when it has no agenda. Yes, Harry said. She was. The vibration outside settled. Not gone, he could still feel the pressure of his father, and the lords at the boundary, patient as stone, present as the tide. Just quieter. As if someone had heard the shift in the room and chosen to give it space. McGonagall reappeared in the doorway with Ron and Hermione. Ron had mud on his robes from somewhere. Hermione had her arms crossed and the expression of someone who has just had a moderately irritating time and is processing it. They both looked at Harry and then at Dumbledore, and then back at Harry with the synchronized question expression of two people who had missed something significant. Harry looked at them and gave the smallest nod. Hermione's shoulders came down a fraction. Ron said quietly, Wicked. Mr. Weasley, McGonagall said from behind him, with the automatic reflexivity of a woman who spent most of her professional life saying this. Sorry, Professor, Ron said, not sounding it. Dumbledore looked at the three of them. At Quirrell still sitting against the wall, looking like someone who had had the worst term of his career and was only now beginning to process that it was over. At the room, the books on the floor, the broken window, the fading remnants of light in the air. He looked at Harry. I'll need time, he said, to gather what I know. To organize it. Take what you need, Harry said. But not long. We don't have long. No, Dumbledore said. I don't suppose we do. He stood. He was very tall, standing, in the way of people who have presence rather than just height. But the height felt different now, still significant, not overwhelming. Just a tall old man who had been very certain for a very long time and was, for perhaps the first time, being asked to be uncertain. Good night, Harry, he said. Good night, Harry said. Dumbledore left. McGonagall went with him, and her footsteps in the corridor had the quality of someone who had a great deal to think about, and was already thinking it. Quirrell stayed on the floor. Harry looked at him. You're going to be all right, he said. It's gone. What was it? Quirrell asked. A piece of someone's soul, Harry said. Attached to you without your knowledge. You're free of it now. Quirrell looked at his own hands with the expression of someone taking inventory of a self they'd lost access to for a significant period. Get some sleep, Harry said. Tomorrow will be better. He went out into the corridor. Ron and Hermione fell in beside him without discussion, the three of them walking back toward Gryffindor Tower through the quiet castle. What happened? Hermione said. Mostly what we thought, Harry said. Voldemort was in Quirrell. He knew I was coming, thought I was being maneuvered. I was, but not in the direction Dumbledore planned. I went in, destroyed the fragment, had a conversation with what was left of Voldemort, and then had a conversation with Dumbledore. How did the conversation with Dumbledore go? Ron asked. Productively, Harry said. And the shaking? Hermione said. The castle shook 3 times. My father, Harry said. And several lords of hell. Knocking. Ron processed this for a few steps. Just knocking, he said. Not coming in. Just knocking, Harry said. I asked him to stay outside. And he did? Ron said. He did, Harry said. Another few steps. That's... Ron started. Don't say wicked, Hermione said. I was going to say impressive, Ron said, with the slight defensiveness of someone who was definitely going to say wicked. They went up the staircases. The castle was settling back into itself around them, the vibration gone, the wards steady, the night quiet. The portraits had stopped their outraged commentary. The torches burned normally. Through the high windows, the sky was clear and very dark, and among the stars the brightest one, the one that rises before dawn, was visible above the tree-line, exactly where it always was. Harry looked at it as they passed the window. I hear you, he thought. He didn't get a reply. He didn't need one. The star was there, and it was bright, and that was enough. Chapter 6. The Morningstar rises. December came to Hogwarts the way it always did, with snow and the smell of pine and the particular relief of a term approaching its end. But this December had a different quality underneath it, a charged stillness, like air before lightning that keeps not arriving. 3 days after the night in Quirrell's office, Dumbledore sent a note. Short, handwritten, no performance in it, just an address and a time, my office. Thursday, 7 o'clock. Bring whoever you trust. Harry showed it to Ron and Hermione at breakfast. Hermione read it twice. He said whoever you trust. He did, Harry said. That's interesting phrasing, she said. I thought so too. Ron was eating toast with the focused energy of someone building structural reserves for something. Are we going? Obviously, Harry said. And Maze? Maze will be there whether I bring her or not, Harry said. Ron accepted this and ate more toast. The 3 days between were not quiet. Word had moved through the castle in the specific way things move through small, sealed communities, not announced, not confirmed, just present, threading from person to person like smoke finding gaps. Something had happened in Quirrell's office. Quirrell himself was on indefinite medical leave, which the school was told was a recurrence of a nervous condition, and which everyone between the ages of 11 and 17 found immediately insufficient as an explanation. Quirrell had missed 2 classes. The defense against the dark arts room had been locked. Harry said nothing publicly. Ron said nothing publicly, which was harder for Ron than it looked, and Harry appreciated the effort. Hermione said, when pressed by anyone who asked, "We're not at liberty to discuss it," which had the effect of confirming that there was something to discuss while not confirming what it was, and which Harry suspected Hermione had calculated in advance. The Slytherins were a specific subset of the general curiosity. The blond boy, Draco Malfoy, Harry had learned, the son of someone important who believed very firmly in his own importance and had managed to transmit this belief to his son with impressive fidelity, had been watching Harry since September with the particular attention of someone who has been told things about a person and is trying to reconcile those things with what he's actually observing. He found Harry in the library on Tuesday afternoon. He came with his two large friends, which Harry had noticed Malfoy always did, not because he was afraid, Harry thought, but because witnesses validated things for him. He came and stood at the end of Harry's table with the posture of someone prepared for a certain kind of interaction and said, "Potter." Harry looked up from the arithmancy text he was working through. "Malfoy. Quirrell's gone." "He's on leave," Harry said. "Everyone knows that's not what happened." Malfoy looked at him directly, which, Harry had noticed, Malfoy actually did, unlike some people who perform directness without practicing it. "Everyone knows something happened in his office." "With you?" "Does everyone?" Harry said. Was it true? That he had. A pause. The large friends at the flanks were very still. There were things people were saying. About what Quirrell was. What he was involved with. Harry looked at Malfoy for a moment. At the practiced certainty in his bearing and the genuine question underneath it. Because Malfoy was not stupid, and he'd been raised in a family that had been on the wrong side of the last war and had performed very specific gymnastics to survive that. And the question of what had happened with Quirrell had implications for Malfoy's father's world that Malfoy was smart enough to see. "Yes," Harry said simply. Malfoy held his gaze. "And you handled it?" "Yes," Harry said. "A beat." Then Malfoy said, in a voice stripped of most of its performative quality, "My father says you're going to be important." He said it before the year started. He said everyone would want to know you. He paused. "I think he meant they'd want to manage you." "They've tried," Harry said. Something moved in Malfoy's expression, something quick and, Harry thought, genuinely interested. "Did it work?" "What do you think?" Harry said. Malfoy looked at him for another moment. Then he picked up his bag. "My father is going to hear about Quirrell," he said. "The real version will get to him eventually." "I'm aware," Harry said. "When it does, there will be people who are unhappy about it." He said it flatly, informationally, in the tone of someone passing on something he thinks is relevant. "People who were invested in the situation Quirrell represented." "Thank you," Harry said, and meant it as information received rather than sentiment. Malfoy left. The two large friends followed. Harry looked at the arithmancy text for a moment, and then put it down, because the interaction had given him something to think about that was more pressing than quadrant theory. The Death Eaters. Voldemort's people. The ones who had survived the First War and claimed they'd been under the Imperius curse and rebuilt their lives on that claim. If Quirrell's situation became known, if what Harry had done in that office became understood by the people who'd been watching for signs of Voldemort's return, then the fallout wasn't just about Dumbledore's plans. It was about a wider political world that had a lot invested in particular outcomes. He wrote to Lucifer that evening, "There's a wider political dimension I need to think through. Voldemort's followers will hear what happened. Some of them will accelerate their own plans. Can you tell me what you know about the ones who are actively operational?" The reply came back with specificity that suggested Lucifer had been tracking this independently. "Lucius Malfoy is the most politically embedded. He has ministry access and uses it. Bellatrix Lestrange is in Azkaban, but her husband and brother-in-law are not, and they communicate. There is a man named Pettigrew who is believed dead and is not. He was your parents' secret keeper, Harry. He betrayed them to Voldemort. He's been hiding in an animal form for 10 years. I've known his location for 2 months. When you want to act on that, tell me." Harry read this several times. Pettigrew. The man who had betrayed his parents. Alive. Hiding. He sat with the weight of that. "Not yet," he wrote back. "But soon. Thursday. 7 o'clock. The gargoyle moved before Harry said the password. It simply stepped aside when he approached, which he took as Dumbledore's indication that he was expected and that formality was suspended for the evening. He went up with Ron and Hermione. He told Maze about the meeting and she had said, "I'll be in the corridor." And he had not argued because arguing with Maze about proximity was a project without a finish line. The office was different. Not physically, the same portraits, the same devices, Fawkes on the perch doing the slow, deliberate thing phoenixes do that looks like breathing but is more complex. But the atmosphere was different. The managed warmth was lower, turned down. There were papers on the desk that Dumbledore hadn't cleared away, which was a choice. Letting them be visible was either an oversight or a signal that the conversation was going to be real rather than performed. Harry chose to believe it was a signal. Dumbledore stood when they came in. He looked at the three of them, Harry, Ron, Hermione, and something in his expression acknowledged them as a unit, not as a boy and his acquaintances but as what they actually were. People who had chosen to be somewhere together, which meant something about all three of them. "Sit down," he said. "Please." They sat. 3 chairs arranged in front of the desk, which someone had done before they arrived. Harry took the middle one. "I've spent 3 days," Dumbledore said, sitting, "doing something that is genuinely unfamiliar to me." He paused. "Examining my own decisions for what they actually were rather than what I told myself they were." Harry waited. "I want to tell you what I know," Dumbledore said. "All of it. And then I want you to ask me whatever you need to ask. And I want to try. I cannot promise to succeed, but I want to try, to answer without the management." "All right," Harry said. Dumbledore began. He told them about the prophecy, not the sanitized version, the full version, either can live while the other survives, and the night Sybil Trelawney had spoken it in a pub in Hogsmeade while Dumbledore listened, and the Death Eater who had heard part of it, and carried it to Voldemort. He told them about James and Lily, about the love between them and the specific terrible physics of what Voldemort had done to them. He told them about the Horcruxes, which he had suspected for years and confirmed through research he had done alone because the information was too destabilizing to share. He told them about the stone. Nicholas Flamel was a friend. The stone had been brought to Hogwarts because it was the safest place Dumbledore knew, which Harry heard now as also the most useful place strategically. He did not say this. He heard it. And then Dumbledore told them about Lily. About what he had known and when. About the year she had spent, the year Harry understood now as the year with Lucifer, though Dumbledore described it obliquely, with the careful language of someone who has decided to be honest, and is discovering that honesty about this particular subject requires him to say things he has spent a decade not saying. "I knew what she had chosen," Dumbledore said. "I knew who she was involved with, before James. I knew what that meant for her child." He looked at Harry directly. "I made a decision. I still believe, though I hold it now with less certainty, that introducing you to that knowledge before you had the grounding to manage it would be dangerous. For you. And for the stability of everything I was trying to protect. You thought knowing my father would make me unstable," Harry said. "I thought it might make you unmanageable," Dumbledore said. The word cost him something. "And I needed you manageable." The honesty of it sat in the room. Ron made a sound. Hermione put her hand on his arm and Ron went quiet, but his ears were very red. "You were right," Harry said. "Knowing my father did make me unmanageable. From your perspective." "Yes," Dumbledore said. "But from mine," Harry said, "it made me myself. Which is what I should have been from the beginning." Dumbledore was quiet for a long moment. Fawkes made a soft sound. The fire crackled. One of the devices on the shelves rotated slowly, catching and releasing light. "I know," Dumbledore said. I think I have always known, somewhere, that the version of events I was engineering required you to be smaller than you are. And I chose to engineer it anyway." He looked at his hands on the desk. "That is the most honest account I can give of myself." Harry looked at him. At the old man who had built a careful world and believed in it completely, and had been wrong in ways that were specific and verifiable, and who was sitting here saying so. He didn't forgive him. That wasn't the work of one conversation. But he felt the thing he'd felt by the lake in October, the possibility of a path forward that wasn't managed, wasn't engineered. Just real. "Voldemort made Horcruxes," Harry said. "Plural. You said you suspect several? What's your count?" Dumbledore looked at him with something that was almost relief. That they were in the problem together. 6, he said. Possibly more. The diary was one, destroyed before tonight. The fragment in Quirrell was connected to it. The ring, I believe he used his grandfather's ring. The locket. The cup. Something of Ravenclaw's or Gryffindor's. And, he stopped. And me, Harry said. Hermione's sharp intake of breath. The night your mother died, Dumbledore said carefully. The killing curse that rebounded, it was made with so much violence, so much deliberate death behind it, that when it struck you and fragmented, a splinter of Voldemort's soul attached to the only living thing in the room. He looked at Harry's scar. Your scar is not merely a wound. It is a Horcrux, Harry said. Yes, Dumbledore said. Which means destroying Voldemort completely. Harry said slowly, working through it. Requires destroying that piece. In theory. Dumbledore said. Yes. The room was very quiet. Ron's ears had gone from red to white. Hermione had both hands flat on her knees and was looking at the middle distance with the expression of someone who has received information and is holding herself very steady with it. Harry looked at Dumbledore. Is this what the prophecy means? That I have to, I don't know. Dumbledore said. I truly don't know. I have theories. But I have held my theories about you with too much certainty for too long, and I am trying, now, not to do that. He met Harry's eyes. I will not pretend I have answers I don't have. Harry nodded once. Then he stood. And he did something he hadn't planned. He hadn't orchestrated this, hadn't calculated it. He walked to the window of the headmaster's office and looked out at the grounds, the snow-covered lawns and the dark lake and the tree-line of the forbidden forest, and the sky above it. He thought about his mother. About Lily Evans, who had sat down with the impossible thing and seen it clearly. About the protection she'd given him, not just the love magic, but this. The anchor of what he carried. She'd wrapped herself around even this, somehow, in whatever she'd done the night she died. He couldn't prove it. He felt it. There's a man named Peter Pettigrew, he said to the window. He's alive. He's been hiding in an animagus form. He's the person who betrayed my parents. Behind him, absolute silence. I want him found, Harry said. Not by me. Not yet. But I want him in a position where he can help Voldemort when Voldemort returns in a more complete form. He turned around. Can you do that? Dumbledore looked at him. Yes, he said. I can do that. And the Horcruxes, Harry said. We work on them together. You share every piece of research you have. We decide together how to approach each one. Yes, Dumbledore said again. Quieter. And the piece in my scar, Harry said. We don't make any decisions about that yet. We research. We understand what we're dealing with before anyone decides what to do about it. He held Dumbledore's gaze. Agreed? Agreed, Dumbledore said, and the word had the weight of something binding. Not a contract. Not a game piece moved. Just two people agreeing to something real. Harry sat back down. And then Fawkes left the perch. Not flying. Phoenixes don't fly to destinations the way birds do, they arrive, and Fawkes arrived on Harry's shoulder with the specific and considered quality of a choice. He sat there and made a sound that was barely a sound, more of a warmth in the air, and Harry held himself very still because there was something significant in it that he didn't want to jostle. Dumbledore looked at Fawkes on Harry's shoulder with an expression that might have been the most unguarded thing Harry had ever seen on his face. He's never done that, Dumbledore said. Not sad. Honest. I know you're worried about the piece in my scar, Harry said. I know what you were building toward. The managed path that ended with me walking into a situation where that piece gets resolved. He paused. You don't need to build that. When it's time, I'll know what to do. How can you be certain? Dumbledore said. Harry thought about the answer. About his mother and the Blue Door and the jazz club and Lucifer at the piano and Maze by the lake and Ron's straightforward loyalty and Hermione's fierce precision and all of it, as the actual foundation rather than a gap in the managed design. Because I know who I am, Harry said. And I'm not afraid of it. Fawkes sang a single note, and it filled the room. They left the office at 9:30. The castle was quiet around them, the evening properly settled, a few stray students making their way back to common rooms. Maze appeared from a shadow at the bottom of the stairs in a way that suggested she'd been there for 2 hours and had found it merely boring rather than a hardship. Well, she said. Productive, Harry said. He told you about the Horcruxes? He told me everything. She looked at him for a moment with the evaluative quality he'd come to count on. The flat, honest read of a demon who had been alive longer than most languages and could not be fooled about what something actually was. Including yours? She said. He told you? Harry said. Your father told me. 3 weeks ago. She said it without apology, which was how Maze said things. He's been carrying that since he found out. He told me so we could discuss what to do about it before telling you. What did you decide? That you'd figure it out, she said. And that the figuring out was yours. He looked at her. At the demon who had sat by the lake with him and thrown stones into the water, and said you'll be fine in the tone of someone who was not worried. Who had been in the corridor outside Quirrell's office and stayed outside it because he'd walked in alone. Thank you, he said. She made the sound, the brief, genuine one that was Maze's version of acknowledgement, and then said, Your father wants to come. Into the castle? Not demanding. Wants. She looked at the ceiling, then back at him. He's been outside the wards since Tuesday. He keeps saying he's not concerned. He's very concerned. Harry thought about Lucifer outside the wards. 3 days of staying outside because Harry had asked him to. 3 days of patience, which Lucifer had told Harry himself was not his strongest attribute. Tell him to come in, Harry said. You sure? Yes, Harry said. Tell him to come in. It's time. Maze looked at him for one more moment. Then she was gone, not through a door, just gone, the corridor slightly emptier, the shadow she'd been using as a seat vacant. Ron looked at the empty space. Does she always do that? Yes, Harry said. Brilliant, Ron said. Come on, Hermione said, and she headed for Gryffindor Tower with the purposeful stride of someone who has had a lot of information handed to her tonight, and intends to begin organizing it immediately. Lucifer came through the gates. Not the wards. Harry felt the moment he crossed inside them, a familiar pressure, the specific warmth of something he'd been feeling at the edges since Denmark Street. Like coming within range of a signal you know. Lucifer came through the gates at the bottom of the grounds in a long black coat, and crossed the snow-covered lawns without leaving footprints in any perceptible way that Harry could see from the window of the common room where he'd been waiting. He went down to the entrance hall alone. Lucifer was at the door when Harry opened it. The cold came in with him, but it wasn't uncomfortable cold, the cold of winter air moving around something warm. His eyes in the light of the entrance hall were the amber of old whiskey, and they went to Harry immediately, directly, with the full weight of 3 days of concerned patience finally having somewhere to land. You could have just... Harry started. I know, Lucifer said. The wards would have... I know, Lucifer said again. He came in and the door closed behind him and the entrance hall was very quiet, just the two of them in the high stone space with the candles and the dark beyond the windows and the distant sounds of the castle doing its evening things above them. Are you all right? Yes, Harry said. And then, because it was his father and his father did not deal in empty things. I found out about the scar. Lucifer looked at him. I know, Harry said. You know. Maze told me you've known for weeks. 3 weeks, Lucifer said. 22 days. That's very specific. I'm very aware of time when there are things I'm not telling you, Lucifer said. It's been, not my most comfortable 22 days. Harry looked at him. At the careful composure of a being who had been outside the wards for 72 hours because his 11-year-old son had asked him to stay outside, and who had done it, and who was now standing in the entrance hall of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry in a coat that cost more than the entire North Wing. Looking at Harry with the specific eyes of a parent who has been unable to do the most important thing available to parents, which is fix it. "There's a piece of Voldemort's soul in my scar," Harry said. "And nobody knows exactly what that means for how it ends. That's the situation." "Yes," Lucifer said. "Do you have a theory?" Harry said. "Not Dumbledore's theory. Yours." Lucifer was quiet for a moment, not avoiding thinking. Harry had learned the difference. "A piece of a human soul, torn and anchored," Lucifer said. "I know soul work. I know it in ways that wizards don't. It's somewhat in my domain, the destinations and conditions of souls. A Horcrux is brutal and structurally unstable. It's not a good piece of work, technically. The magic that holds it together is held together by Voldemort's continued existence." He looked at Harry's forehead. "The question is whether destroying Voldemort's soul entirely resolves the anchor. Whether the piece detaches when the source goes. Does it?" Harry said. "In theory," Lucifer said, and the word theory was carried carefully. "In theory, yes. If the destruction is complete enough, total enough, if there's nothing left to anchor to, the fragment would have nowhere to be." He paused. "But I want to be clear about something." "Tell me." "I am not willing to treat your life as a variable in a theoretical equation," Lucifer said. "I want to be clear that whatever the path forward is, whatever is required, I am not in the category of people who will stand at a distance and let it be whatever it needs to be. I'm your father. The path forward takes that into account. I'm not asking you to stand at a distance," Harry said. "I'm asking you to let me lead it." The amber eyes held his. "There's a difference," Harry said, "between being on your own and being the one in front." "I know the difference," Lucifer said. "I'm learning to be comfortable with it." "Are you?" "No," Lucifer said. "But I'm making the attempt, which is more than I make for most things." Harry almost smiled. "Almost. Come upstairs," he said. "I want to show you something." They went up through the castle, and the castle, Harry noticed, responded to Lucifer in a specific way. Not fear. More like the response of an old building encountering something that has been in the world longer than it has, and adjusting its sense of itself accordingly. The portraits watched without saying anything. The moving staircases moved. The torches burned a degree warmer. Harry took him to the 7th floor. To the corridor where the Quibbler had been. It was empty now, he could feel that clearly, the absence of the wrongness that had been here since September. The floor was ordinary stone. The air was ordinary castle air. "Here," Harry said. Lucifer looked at the corridor. At the floor where the fragment had been consolidated, the wall it had been working through. He crouched down, which was a surprising thing to see the devil do, the full dignified crouch of someone examining something carefully, and put his hand flat on the stone. "Destroyed," he said. "Cleanly." He looked up at Harry. "What did you use?" "My wand," Harry said. "And what's underneath?" "You let it go fully," Lucifer said. "Enough of it," Harry said. "I've been thinking about that. About what it is and how to use it. It's not separate from the wizard magic, it runs underneath it. When I use my wand, the wizard magic is the form and the other thing is the source. If I let them work together instead of keeping one background, the effect is considerably stronger," Lucifer said. "Considerably," Harry agreed. Lucifer stood. Looked at the corridor. Then looked at his son. "Your mother," he said, "once told me that the thing she found most unsettling, she said, though she meant it as a compliment, about me was that I had no ceiling. She said most things have a ceiling, even if the ceiling is very high. She said I was one of the only things she'd ever encountered that didn't." "And?" Harry said. "And you have her precision," Lucifer said. "And whatever she found unsettling about me." Which means your ceiling is. He paused, looking at the empty corridor. What? Harry said. Undetermined. Lucifer said. Even by me. He said it with the specific warmth of someone who is proud in a way that doesn't need to be performed because the pride is too genuine for performance. Harry stood in the 7th-floor corridor of Hogwarts with the emptiness where the fragment had been and his father beside him and felt, for the first time since July 31st, not the compressed certainty of someone who knows he is something, but the open, spacious feeling of someone who is finding out, piece by piece, what that something actually is. And finding it larger each time. Lucifer stayed for 2 hours. They walked the grounds, the snow crunching under Harry's feet, not under Lucifer's, which Harry had stopped being surprised about, and they talked. Not about Horcruxes or Voldemort or Dumbledore's plans or the political geometry of the wizarding world. About music. About his mother. About what hell was actually like, which Lucifer described with the amused candor of someone very comfortable with their home while being aware of its reputation. The architecture is extraordinary, Lucifer said. Most people imagine fire and misery. It's misery, certainly, for the people who've earned it. But the structure itself, the engineering of a place designed to exist outside ordinary dimensional constraints, it's exceptional work. I had very specific intentions. You designed it? Harry said. God designs the blueprints, Lucifer said, with the wry edge he always had when this subject came up. I tend the execution. You tend hell, Harry said. I tend hell, Lucifer confirmed. It's more administrative than people think. Do you like it? Harry said. Lucifer was quiet for a moment. I like the piano more, he said. They had reached the edge of the lake. The snow was thin here, the ground hard with frost. The surface of the water was dark and flat and reflected nothing, overcast sky, no moon. Harry stood at the edge and thought about the first morning Maze had found him here, the October morning when everything had been positioned and none of it had moved yet. What happens when Voldemort comes back properly? Harry said. Not the fragment, the real thing. He'll find a body. He'll rebuild. The Horcruxes we haven't found yet will sustain him until they're gone. He will come back, Lucifer said. Not comfort. Fact. And when he does, he'll be looking for you. I know, Harry said. And when he finds me, he'll find considerably more than he's expecting, Lucifer said. That's the plan, Harry said. Do you have the rest of the plan? Lucifer said. In outline, Harry said. Hermione is working on the detail. She's better at the detail than me. She's very impressive, Lucifer said. Granger. I've heard about her from Maze. What did Maze say? She said the girl is relentless in a way that Maze finds professionally respectful. Harry looked at the lake. And Ron? Maze said he's loyal in the way that very few things are loyal. That's accurate, Harry said. The people around you are going to matter, Lucifer said. When this gets serious, and it will get serious, Harry, in ways that this year's version hasn't been, the people standing with you matter. I know. Good. A pause. I want to meet them. Formally. Ron would combust, Harry said. He'd survive it, Lucifer said. He'd combust and survive it, Harry said. Which might be worse. Lucifer smiled, the real one, quick and genuine. I've met worse reactions. Harry thought about this and decided that was probably true. Next term, Harry said. When we come back from Christmas. Come to Hogsmeade. I'll bring them. Agreed, Lucifer said. They stood at the edge of the lake for a moment longer. The castle was lit behind them, towers and windows and battlements, ancient and solid and full of everything that was going to happen before this was done. The Forbidden Forest was very dark to their right. The snow was still coming down, light and intermittent. Dad, Harry said. It was the first time he'd used the word. He'd been aware of not using it, not as avoidance, but as saving it, the way you save a word until the moment it's the right word rather than any other. Lucifer went very still beside him. I'm going to be all right, Harry said. Whatever the piece in the scar means. Whatever the path through the Horcruxes looks like. However long Voldemort takes to come back properly. He looked at the lake. I'm going to be all right. I know, Lucifer said. Very quiet. I need you to know it, Harry said. Not just believe it as an act of faith. Actually know it. Because the version where you spend the next few years worrying about me and being on the outside of the wards when I need you on the inside, that's not useful. He looked at him. I need you operational, not anxious. Lucifer looked at him for a long moment. You're 11 years old, he said. I'm your son, Harry said. And my mother's son. Those two things together, I have no ceiling. You said so yourself? The amber eyes held his. Something in them moved, the particular movement of a very old and very controlled being encountering a feeling that doesn't have good defenses and deciding not to build any. Yes, Lucifer said. You do. He reached out and put his hand on Harry's head, briefly, the way you do with something that matters more than most things, the gesture of it meaning exactly what it means and nothing extra, and then took it away. Operational, he said. Yes. I can do that. Good, Harry said. They stood by the lake for another minute. Then Harry said, You should go. It's getting late. It is, Lucifer said. And you have a club to run. I do, Lucifer said. And hell to tend. And an administrative situation. Ongoing, Lucifer agreed, with the wry edge. He stepped back from the lake. Paused. Harry. Harry looked at him. For what it's worth, Lucifer said in the voice that had no performance in it, the one Harry had heard for the first time at the bar in Denmark Street and had been learning the shape of since. Every calculation I have made in the last 11 years, every decision about distance, about timing, about when and whether and how, the one thing I never doubted was you. He paused. I doubted myself. Frequently. I doubted whether staying away was right, whether coming sooner would have been better, whether the enchantments were worth the trade. I didn't doubt you. Not once. Harry stood in the snow. I know, he said. Lucifer nodded once, with the finality of something settled. Then he walked away across the grounds, and the snow didn't crunch under his feet, and at the gate he paused once and looked back, just a look, brief, the kind of look that is also a kind of checking, and then he was gone. The gate closed. Harry stood at the edge of the lake. Above him, through a gap in the clouds, one star was visible. Bright. Brighter than the ones around it. The one that rises before dawn and is called, in the oldest of the old languages, the morning star. He looked at it for a moment. Then he turned and walked back toward the castle, and his footprints were clear in the snow behind him, going nowhere he'd been before. The term ended. Students filled the corridors with the particular energy of people about to be elsewhere, trunks and owls and half-packed bags and the collective psychic exhale of a community releasing an accumulated term's worth of pressure. Ron was going home to the burrow and had invited Harry with such sincerity that Harry had said yes before Ron finished the sentence. Hermione was going to her parents, and had spent the last 2 days of term making lists in a small notebook that Harry suspected contained the entire research program for the Horcrux problem organized by priority, and cross-referenced by difficulty. She gave him a copy before she left. For reference, she said. He looked at it. 8 pages of small, precise handwriting. This is extraordinary. It's a framework, she said. The actual work is harder. We'll do the actual work, he said. She looked at him with the expression she'd worn since the first time he'd confirmed what he was, the one that had decided early on to be steady rather than spectacular, and had mostly succeeded. Harry. Yes? I want you to know that I don't. Whatever comes next, I'm not following you into it because you're who you are. The son of, I'm not interested in proximity to significance. She said it quickly and clearly, getting to the point before the awkward settled. I'm your friend because you're worth being friends with. That's separate from everything else. I know, he said. I'm just saying it clearly so there's no ambiguity later. Hermione, he said. What? I know, he said again, and he meant it completely. She nodded once, the way she nodded when something was settled, and picked up her bag and went. He watched her go and thought about the girl who had stood in the compartment doorway looking for a toad and had decided in 40 minutes that she was sitting down, and felt the specific gratitude of having found the right people in the right place before the hard parts started. Ron was in the entrance hall with his trunk and an expression of limitless goodwill toward the holidays. Ready? He said. Ready, Harry said. They went out into the December cold together. The Hogwarts Express was at the station at the bottom of the grounds, puffing its red existence into the gray air. The snow was deep on either side of the path, and the castle rose behind them, all towers and lit windows, and Harry walked away from it without looking back because looking back was for things you were leaving, and he was not leaving. He was going and coming back. There was a difference. On the train, in their compartment, with Ron eating approximately his own body weight in every flavor beans and making faces at the bad ones, Harry leaned his head against the window and watched the Scottish countryside roll past and thought about everything the year had been. The black envelope on the hallway floor. The jazz club. The blue door. Lucifer at the piano. Maze by the lake. Dumbledore in the office. Quirrell on the floor. The light in the room. The piece in his scar. The Horcruxes. Pettigrew alive somewhere. Voldemort coming back, not if but when. All of it arranged in his mind not as a weight but as a landscape, things that existed, things he knew, things he was moving through rather than being moved by. He pressed 2 fingers to his forehead. The scar was quiet. Whatever was left of Voldemort in the wider world was not currently paying attention to him. Or if it was, it had learned something in Quirrell's office about what happened when it looked at Harry, about what looked back. He put his hand down. Ron said, around a mouthful of something that appeared to be causing him internal conflict. Mate, what are you thinking about? Harry looked at him. At the freckled, open, entirely honest face of the first friend he'd ever had. Next year? Harry said. Ron grinned. Yeah? Yeah, Harry said. The train moved through the countryside through the fading light of a December afternoon, south toward London, and in London a jazz club with a blue door that didn't belong to the rest of the buildings sat on Denmark Street, and at the piano inside it something with amber eyes and no footprints in the snow sat and played something quiet and enormous, and in the castled hills of Scotland. In a round office full of devices and portraits, and one phoenix who had chosen a different perch, an old man sat with a list of names that needed finding and a promise he had made to a boy who had looked at him and required honesty and received it, and in the places below all of this, below the stone and the root systems and the deep cold places of the earth, the lords of hell had returned to their stations but their attention remained, patient, total, fixed on the boy above them like the attention of deep water on the surface. The train went south. The star came out early, before the sun was fully down, which it sometimes did in winter when the sky was clear, the bright one, the first one, the one that has been there longer than anything you can see from Earth and will be there longer than anything you can name. Harry saw it in the window's reflection. He smiled. Everything that was going to happen next had not happened yet, and it was going to be difficult and serious and real, and people were going to underestimate him and try to manage him and use him and position him. And Voldemort was going to come back with a body and a plan and the full force of what he was, and the Horcruxes had to be found and destroyed and the piece and the scar had to be understood and resolved. And all of it was real and all of it was coming. Harry Potter, Harry Morningstar, leaned his head back against the seat and felt the train moving south toward Christmas and his father's jazz club and the friends who would come back in January and the year ahead of them, and what he felt was not dread, not fear, not the managed smallness of someone who has been told he is ordinary and has half believed it. He felt ready. He had always been ready. The world was just catching up.